It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the last week before the new iPhones are here. We'll talk about all the rumors. There's an interesting thought about a capacitive button that might make it very difficult for case makers. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about why villains don't carry iPhones, or maybe they do. And who's going to take over for Tim Cook? Mark Gurman has an idea. All of that and more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 937, recorded Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. Quid pro Ming-Chi quo. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we get together, talk about the latest news from Apple. And this is an interesting MacBreak Weekly because we're 6 days away from actual news from Apple. But we will talk about it with Jason Snell from sixcolors.com. Hello, Jason.
Good to be here.
And Mr. Alex Lindsay from officehours.global.
Hello, hello.
The inventor of MacBreak Weekly. The godfather of MacBreak Weekly.
I hold the patent, actually. I've licensed
do.
Yeah,
you probably
wow,
do.
The godfather. I hope we don't go to the mattresses.
Let's go to the mattresses with this guy.
Yeah, you got a thunderbolt,
We're waiting for Andy to get his thing together. He's gotten some USB issues, but that's all right. We'll do what we can do right now, and we'll get Andy in the minute he's available. So first question, of course, is to you, Jason. Did you get an invite?
Of a sort. I'm working on it. I may or may not be there next week. Where I'm working it. I'm working the refs right now. It's a tough ticket. So here's the thing: the iPhone event. Those of us in the tech sphere think about Apple events, and they're all the same, and they're not. They're not all the same. Apple events.
No, we got you. Hold on a second. Andy's confused. We got you, Andy. We hear you. We started without you. But just hang on. We'll get to you in a second. Andy Ihnatko's also here from WGBH in Boston. We're going to catch you up, Andy. And then what I did just now was ask Jason if he got an invite yet. And he's explaining this quasi-invite. You've never missed an Apple event.
I got invited to watch a streaming video on the internet. But
I get that invite, too.
This is not the first time that it's been like this. We in the tech industry think about Apple events as kind of being all the same. And the truth is, the intense interest from global media for the iPhone event is not like any other Apple event.
Yeah.
It is a tough ticket. There are broadcast and influencers and all that from all over the world, and that broadcast means that it's multiple people. It's a really hard ticket, and for the last couple, I've had to tap my PR sources and be like, "Hey, I'm local. I'm just one person. Can you get me in?" And so far, that's worked. So hopefully, I'll be there on Monday. But the fact is, these days, it's a video. I mostly want to go so I can get my hands on the products afterward, because that's probably more than a week before anybody else gets to touch them. So we'll see. But it's a very different situation. And the eyes of the world, I mean, that's the other thing. The eyes of the world
Can
are
you
on the
mute
iPhone
Andy
event.
until he figures out how the sound works?
Okay. Sorry, I got it.
Okay.
So the eyes of the world are on this event like no other too. So we all watch all the Apple events, right? But there are people for whom this is it. This hour and a half is the entire message that they'll get straight from Apple for the whole year. It's a big deal. So it's it'll be worth watching. But people way beyond us have been are going to be watching really close.
You know why? It's a YouTube streamer's paradise. It's how they get all the hits and the clicks.
The iPhone is what people care. I mean, again, our audience here cares about the iPhone and the Mac and the iPod and maybe the iPad, the iPod, the
all the eyes,
all the things, and the world cares a lot about the iPhone and a very little about all the rest of it. And that's just the truth of it.
I'm sorry.
I'm done. I yield the rest of my time.
you cede your time. Sorry, just starting the clock.
Going great. It's going great today.
Where are we? Oh, yeah. So will you be here more importantly, from my point of view, will you be here next Tuesday for MacBreak Weekly?
I love this. They very kindly didn't have their event during our airtime.
Yeah.
And therefore, I will be able to be here the next day for MacBreak Weekly, which is very exciting.
So you'll be hosting.
They usually block it, and I'm off somewhere, and I can't do it. But, I think I'm filling in for you. So, yes, I'm very happy for that.
There will be lots to talk about.
So much.
But the stuff we're talking about now is the next event. Hey, Andy, sorry. Glad we could get you in there. Sorry we started without you. I was just concerned.
I don't know how, but I fried my USB hub.
Oh, that's too bad.
Smells like bacon. So if you can recommend like a USB hub.
Don't cook bacon on your USB hub. Come on.
Well, so sue me. I like to have a little hit of protein and salt right before the show. It keeps me more alert. I don't know what happened, but that's
anyway.
What brand?
It's an Anchor.
I've had it for a while.
I've fried many a USB device. There's something.
It's how much power you pull. It's been so useful that it's so reliable that it took me like a lot of cable swapping and diagnosing before I thought maybe I should smell it to see if it's fried. And so I'm sorry. As a result, I'm off of Ethernet. I'm on Wi-Fi. And because my M1 MacBook Pro only has 2 USB-C ports, I'm using my FaceTime camera. And
you actually look fine.
Good.
And we can see more of the outside world too, which is kind of nice. Usually
Indeed,
that's
more environment.
It's pretty. It's very pretty. It's a pretty day in New England, which is good.
So I didn't hear anything.
Days.
Yeah. Actually, ironically, I was singing "I'm Still Here" when it disconnected and I had to leave.
That's right. No, he's not. Here.
Nope, I'm not still here. I'm still here.
So I will be out of pocket for. I don't know why. A year ago, we planned this trip. And why didn't I think, September, that's probably when the new iPhones come out. So I will have to I will cede my time to you, Mr. Jason Snell. Thank you for filling in.
Sure.
What do we expect? Actually, that's a silly question because everybody who's
out,
watching.
Leo. Yeah, ready for a new iPhone?
Everybody knows what to expect. What do you sometimes though there's something that the leaks didn't tell us about. Do you think there'll be anything like that?
Well, okay, so the big things are lots of leaks are from the supply chain,
right.
Not a lot of leaks from marketing. So the places that you'll see stuff that might be surprising are some details about the hardware works with software, where the software hasn't leaked or hasn't leaked in very particular ways. Like, for example, there's supposedly a capacitive button on the new iPhone that is tied to the camera, and it's probably got multifunction. So it doesn't just activate the camera, but it lets you focus or zoom or, who knows what the details are. And that's one of those cases where everybody seems to know from the supply chain that button's there, but the software and what exactly it does, nobody knows. So product
explain
names,
to me
prices,
a little bit what you mean by
details.
Capacitive. So I'm looking at my iPhone 15. I've got the screen on/off switch. I've got that new action button.
You got the action button, right? The action button's a physical button that you can push. This is going to be like a virtual button where it's got probably a haptic under it.
So you just you'll touch it, kind of
like a little trackpad.
Yeah.
Like a little trackpad. And the idea there, at least people are thinking is it going to be sort of like you press a little bit and then press harder to take the shot? Are you going to be able to swipe on it? And this is one of those cases where because we don't know that detail of the rumor, it's a little more mysterious. Product names, prices, other software features that Apple has withheld from the betas because they don't want it out there because it's going to reveal a special piece of software that they built just for the new models. Those will all be the surprises.
And it'd be interesting to see if we get some kind of interactive zoom. That's one potential thing that we could see. With the capacitance being able to move back and forth, because right now it's a little bit of a kludge. When you want to zoom in, I mean, people, YouTubers have gotten really good at it, or TikTokers have gotten good at it, but it'd be nice to have something that gave you a little bit more control over zooming in and out, and having something on the top that you can move in and out would be useful for a lot of people.
Where do you think do we know where this button will be? Is it the top?
It's going to be on one of the sides. It's going to be on the long side. The one side that is not already got right. It's going to be, and
so
you're thinking how will I clip that in? But if it's capacitive, it'll be touch based, so you won't have to worry about it. Right. Presumably you'll hold your phone and you'll be able to have this thing here. And just like with the action button, I really love the idea of tying software to a physical action because, even tech nerds have that moment where it's like, oh, I got to swipe to this mode and I'll do all of that. And for regular people, being able to just take out your phone and press a button and take a picture instead of having to, do I unlock? Do I swipe? What mode am I in? Do I tap? I'm holding it, but now I have to move my finger and it shakes the camera. The more you can tie physical controls to software in friendly ways, I think the better it is for a regular user of a phone.
100%. I've at the end of summer, I've been spending a lot of time just walking around. Like when I'm taking a walk, I will have like my good camera like in my right hand, and it has a really nice grip on it. And I find I'm taking a lot more pictures that way because all I have to do is raise it to my face and press a button that's already under my finger, and the picture gets taken. As opposed to, as you say, unlock, tap the camera button, maybe align yourself with your thumb with a piece of glass that represents the shutter button. Yeah, I think that the move towards like enhancing the number of actual, I guess we can't call them buttons so much as tappable haptic surfaces on the edge of the phone is a really, really good step forward. And as I said, and talked about last week, the idea of having like a dedicated edge, a dedicated button, actual physical area that you hold this down and now you're activating Shlomo and the ability to talk to the AI and say, can you identify this thing I'm looking at right now? Or can you add this to my calendar or anything like that? I think that that's going to be one of the biggest changes and enhancements to the iPhone interface since iOS 7.
One of the things that's interesting, we've heard all these rumors that Apple wants a buttonless iPhone, a portless iPhone. If you had a capacitive button, might be getting people used to that. That's kind of buttonless. It still seals it, right?
Yeah. The problem is
it does make cases more complicated.
You know, this was the rumor last year.
Oh, good point.
Too.
Yeah, you have to have a hole in your case, otherwise.
Remember the rumor last year that the action button was supposed to be capacitive, and it didn't work. And so they had to swap at the last minute, relatively speaking, they had to swap it out for a physical button. So maybe a year on, they've got it working with more confidence. But yeah, cases is a real question about, do you leave a cutout for this? At what point is a case like a very thin frame around the edges of where all the buttons are for something like this? But yeah, presumably you need a human being's finger needs to be able to touch this thing for it to work.
Yeah, and also like there's such a big user interface bonus to having something that in a tactile way feels different from the rest of the surface. I'm not so much opposed to capacitive buttons with haptics, so long as they put some sort of a texture or a treatment to the side so that in the middle of the night, if I just want to record a note or do something, I can pick my phone off the nightstand, feel that, okay, there's the action button or whatever I want to do, hold that down. Same thing with the camera, where if you really want to prosecute that concept, the idea of, once again, having to look down away from the thing you want to take a picture of to make sure that you're lining up your fingertip with that the undifferentiated section of the frame that represents a touch button, that's not really prosecuting this idea to its fullest.
It's also different from what you already have, because in fact, they're talking about it in the YouTube and the Discord chat. You already have the volume up button as a camera button.
It is a shutter.
And you could make the action button a camera button.
Right. Although I wonder if this will be on the base model phones and the action button will not be, right? Because the action button, I think, is a pro phone feature. And I wonder if they might do this everywhere as a sort of, everybody learns the new muscle memory. But yeah, there are already shortcuts to do it, which is why and this is again back to what we don't know. We don't know the narrative. We don't know the storytelling about why Apple did this and why it's different. And there's going to be a spin, right? If the answer is, well, the action button and the volume buttons already do this, so who cares? They wouldn't have done it. They've got a reason, and we can speculate about it, which is fun. But like, that's going to be interesting to hear them say, like, why this and not the existing things. Although people are saying, like, when you press a hardware button, it moves the phone physically and you can hear it and it shakes the phone.
It's not good.
Something capacitive where it's already you're just sort of slightly adjusting the pressure of your grip might actually be better.
Oh, you got a tidbit. I just saw it. You got the little, the Lemetric. You got one.
I put a Lemetric time behind me. It's fun.
I was going to give you my old one, but as it turned out, it wasn't working.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, I got a deal on one, so I decided to, because I had the old model, and this is people who aren't viewing the podcast won't know, but the Lemetric time is a fun clock that I learned about from you, and I have it wired up so it shows the time and the temperature for my weather station.
I do like that, and we're going to watch it carefully because it's supposed to get to the mid-90s.
I'll make it the pick at the end of the show, so we'll talk about it.
Which is why I'm not wearing a blazer. I am wearing just a t-shirt practically, because it's getting hot in here. So I replaced my, I put my, this is the tidbit up here. But you like your Lumetric better than the Tidbit. I'm sorry, this is a digression, but
yeah, no, it's these are all fun, and we can talk about it more in picks because I will make it my pick. But the great thing about actually, it's funny. I had to hack Lumetric's old version of the Lumetric Time to display stuff for my server, and it turns out their new version actually has an app that literally you point at a JSON on a server and it processes it, which is what I had to do all along, but now I don't have to worry about it, which is pretty great. But yeah, it's just I'm a fan of those kind of. I've got one under our TV, and it's just so great.
It's so nice.
A glanceable, a smart device that's just things you see at a glance, and they just are ambient information.
Okay, sorry about the digression.
We'll be back.
I am going to put the rat hole sound on my soundboard.
It's the week before an iPhone event. We really don't have a lot to talk about.
We have more than you would think. Mark Gurman dropped a bomb on everybody. Like 18 different. Thank you. Well, thank you.
And I think that the big thing with the buttons is that the phone is a camera that does other things. I mean, I think that a vast majority of people are looking at the camera.
It's a camera.
It's a camera that also answers calls and lets you do other things. But when you look at the use and when people make decisions about when to get a new, like every person I talk to is like, oh, I got to get a new phone. It's because they need to get a new camera because the low light isn't good enough or whatever. There's some new feature that they want. And so that's and so I think Apple just keeps on, adding if we get this new sensor, the new 48 megapixel sensor in the ultra wide,
the non-Max phone may get the tetraprism, the 5x zoom. And Alex, you're absolutely right. Cameras are a huge driver in phone sales because we use them, right? I was thinking the other day about, and trying to explain to my son actually about life before smartphone cameras.
In the old days.
And I mean, when I was a kid, I had a little 110 Kodak camera with and the flash was temporary. It burned out and you had to replace it, right? After one shot, you had to get a new
you get a whole thing of flashes, right?
And you get 5 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it is one of the ways that we don't think about as much that is so transformational, and as a result, people if the camera is better, if the output is better, if it's easier to use, all of those things are reasons to get a new phone.
I mean, Apple, and that Apple knows this because the last thing they talk about on every iPhone announcement is the camera. Everything else, we'll give you all the other stuff because they know that we're just sitting there waiting. We're patiently waiting, just nodding our head.
They have had a super boring phone update with very little interesting in it, except the camera got better. And they know that is actually enough to clear the bar for a lot of people.
And I don't know what the number is. When 60 Minutes did their thing, I think 10 years ago, they said that in the interview, they said that 200 engineers work on the camera. And now I'm sure it's 1,000, that are all working on that technology to make that work.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons why when I switched, when I got my last top tier phone a few years ago, it was this one has a pentaprism, really good zoom. The new iPhone does not. That was one of the real slam dunks of no, I don't want to switch back to iPhone if it doesn't have this really cool lens. But this is something just occurred to me, and I'd like to see particularly what Alex's response to this would be. Given that Apple is justifiably very, very proud of being one of the best cameras, not just the best camera phones, but one of the best and most popular cameras in the world, what if Apple were to create a hardware API to say that to facilitate the creation of third-party grips that make it more operable as sort of a camera? So what they would do is here is, if you want to control the camera app, this is a hardware controller, whether it's a hand grip or an external controller, can have a shutter button. It can have a top scroll wheel that will by default do this. And it can have a bottom scroll wheel that will by default do that. The shutter button can have a half depress in which it will do this. And so the built-in camera app will support any third-party device that uses this API, and that API would be open both to developers of photography apps and to hardware makers who want to do something as simple as just give me a walk around grip that gives the user that same feel of a real camera, where you just hold it up, you press a button, it takes a picture, all the way to professional videographers who might want to have something inside a frame.
Yeah,
what would you think about that?
I was trying to find an example of that actually working.
Yeah, I've had a few of those, and they're okay, but they don't really work.
Well, yeah, I mean, so Tilta makes one that is it'll do zoom and focus on the Blackmagic camera, so it ties into the Blackmagic, and Apple showed it in their keynote. That's why I have one, and I've had trouble getting it to pair up. To your point, but when it pairs up, it's nice soft controls. You can zoom, you can just tap on it, zoom, tap on it, do focus, and so it will. And what you do is you end up with an iPhone rig, and then you put it on there with a NATO mount, and you just kind of pop it on, and now you can turn it. And we've been building a lot of these controls, so a lot of that stuff is available. It's not available to the Apple Photo app, but it is available. Like the one that is kind of the ties into everything out there right now is the Blackmagic app. And so the Blackmagic app is really designed around this professional videography kind of thing. But it's not really a still app, to your point, where you could do those controls. But I think that there's a strong demand for those. And I think that because I put things in rigs all the time, and I think that there is something there. I think people want to lean on software, but there is something about being able to just grab onto something and move it, especially when you're talking about little zooms and little focus and those kinds of things. You really want to have something tactile to do that. And so I think that those
And my problem, like when I'm trying to do real photography with my iPhone, is that I'm holding this $1,000 thing with the corners, and if the more I take a thumb off to like do the zoom or do a pinch, the less stable my hold is. And just to be clear, I'm thinking about something along the lines of those game controllers you can get that plug in through USB, and they put like grips on one side or another. That's the sort of thing I'm looking at. So it would be a hard connection. It wouldn't be like a Bluetooth connection. And once again, if all you wanted to do is here's something that you would snap into the iPhone because you're walking around you're walking around Disney World. It has a tripod mount. It has a little bolster so you can put your wrist strap on it. All the way to I actually want something that will actually also, like, you can mount you can mount lenses to it, and you can control the zoom, you control the exposure, control that kind of stuff. That's that kind of thing. I would spend $100 for.
We talked about. I don't know. I think I started talking about it on This Week in Photo maybe 15 years ago, about wanting to have a case that you just slide your iPhone into, and the case has got all the hardware and the lensing and everything else that you'd want. And a lot of it, what I wanted was a larger sensor. Now the sensor is getting larger and larger and larger. I mean, I think that they're looking at getting very close to a 1-inch sensor for the next Pro Max, I guess is the rumor. And it's not even that far away now. I think it's 1 and 1.5 or 1 and 1.44 or something like that. So so those sensors are getting bigger. That's part of what makes that work. But I think that I do agree with you, though, having hardware around it. The problem I have now is that I take my still camera out, and I have used it so little compared to my phone that I take a couple photos with it, and I realize I don't remember where all the menus are anymore. Number one, and number two is it's not capturing any GPS, which is just devastating to me. Like I so often I search by location. I go into photos. Show me a bunch of photos in from Washington D.C. or Delhi or wherever I've been, and I can just go find the photos. I don't have to figure out when that was or whether they're in a folder or anything else. And so shooting anything without, like, for me, I can't believe that. I mean, they make attachments. Every time I say this, people say, well, they have attachments for it. Not selling, having a DSLR without GPS built in, like, just, it's going to do it all the time, devastate sales. I promise that more people would use them. I don't want to have some extra add-on to do it. It should be built into every camera, every DSLR. Just adding that GPS functionality makes a big difference, because
my Leicas do an interesting thing. I think the Olympus might too. They pair to the iPhone, and it keeps it there, and it does a great job. In fact, it's paired right now to the iPhone. So every time I take a picture, it gets the GPS from the iPhone. Yeah, and that's to keep it smaller, right? Simpler.
Yeah. I just feel like it's GPS is a pretty well-known technology at this point, and it's not a very big chip.
I remember carrying a standalone GPS tracker that you paired with your phone after I was in China and I dropped it and it's gone. I was on one of those big mountain peaks. And
I lost one somewhere.
Yeah.
But like I look at like this. This is I heard this noise that I hadn't heard before in the middle of the night. And I go out and I take a photo of it. I couldn't see what I was looking at. And I took a photo and I got this.
Oh, that's incredible.
Like there was a great
Holy cow.
Like I was like, it's like I couldn't see it. And I just
That was with what? The iPhone?
That was with the iPhone. Like
That's amazing.
And that's just like ambient light from stuff around.
That's a gorgeous photo.
Yeah, but it's just looking straight at me like, hello, great horned owl. And I was just I was just kind of amazed that I took that picture with a
no
phone,
kidding.
Yeah.
So 2 questions. One, somebody in the Discord asked, can't we just tell Shlomo what settings we want? Wouldn't it be nice and you say, add a stop to that shot as I'm taking it? Do we want that?
The problem is you're talking to your camera while you're hanging out with people.
You look like an idiot, but people with Bluetooth headsets look like idiots for years. So
there's a skill set there too. I mean, like just like anything else, like knife skill, like cutting skills or doing all these other things. You look at someone who does TikTok or YouTube or even my kids, the speed at which they can, like I complain about not having the controls that I want, but you just watch them grab onto my daughter. If you set the phone down, she'll pick it up and she does this like 0.5 thing over her head. And she does it so fast that I barely even notice she does it. Like she just does it. It's like this goofy, it's a photo that she knows how to do. But my kids know, and again, when you hang out with, someone like Justine Ezerick, you hang out with Justine and you ever see her take pictures, and her understanding of how to control that phone is at a whole nother level, and so I think that there is a skill there that just using the screen. I still think that I agree that I think having more buttons around the outside edge and really turn it into a phone. It's a phone that that answers calls sometimes. The funny thing is that most of us turn everything. I don't know how everybody else is.
I'm always in Do Not Disturb.
I'm in Do Not Disturb or in some super restricted access control that like 8 people can get a hold of me all the time, 100% of the time. So I think that's why it's not even a phone anymore, is because scam calls and all these telemarketers made it so that like I don't need to have my phone on.
It's 2 things, and I bet Jason will agree with me. It's a phone, a camera, and it is how you control your house. Right. It's your house remote control. If you're lucky. I can turn my lights on and off. That's about it.
Well, and then it's also your jukebox. I mean, at this point,
and it's your jukebox.
You sit there and I'm just amazed. Like I don't. I just keep on. My headphones are on, or in my car, or in the whatever. You're just kind of like it just kind of moves along with you, without And I think that, but it's not a phone anymore. Like we call it a phone, but I barely ever call anybody.
It's your little pocket pal that's fun to be with. What do the case makers get advance notice now? Because that is, if they do put a capacitive touch thing on this thing, that's going to change everything. Are they going to get advance notice of this?
Advance notice, I think maybe isn't what I would phrase it at. I will say case makers seem to know way in advance what the shape of the iPhone is going to be, right? Like some of the first things we know about an iPhone are
from
the
cases.
Shape of the cutouts and all of that, and they're leaks from the case makers. And you might say, well, that's because Apple talks to them. I don't think so. I think, and this is just, based on what we've seen, I think there is a real serious like quid pro quo / bribery trail that happens.
Ming-Chi quo. It's a quid pro quo / Ming-Chi quo.
It's a quid pro Ming-Chi quo. But it is that. It's like I think the supply chain leaks a lot, but the case makers, I think they know that their livelihood is such that they have to be there on day one with iPhone cases. And I think that they are happy to pay people involved with manufacturing the exterior of the iPhone to get the specs as close as possible to reality. And every now and then you see something where you're like, this is not quite right. But I think most of the time that's what's going on, is that the case makers just have to get that information, and they know they have to get it.
Peak Design is a good example. And I think a few others fell for this. Didn't have the right cutout for the action button on their first version of this.
Yeah.
So this is version 2, which actually they put a button in.
like what I said earlier, though, keep in mind, remember, it seems like that wasn't going to be there originally. They were going to do the capacitive button, and I wonder if they were basing it on some prototype
that was
builds.
A cutout. Yeah,
exactly. That they did because they felt like they needed to have it there for capacitive reasons, and then Apple changed it, and you're like, oh no, we messed this one up. We're sorry. It's a tough. I mean, also that's part of their game is risk. To quote Star Trek, risk is their business. They have to be there on day one, and if that means a certain percentage risk that they're going to have to junk a bunch of cases because it didn't fit, they know that they have to do it because otherwise they won't be there on day one, and people are going to want to order that case right then, especially when we don't know, talk about mysteries of next week, what's Apple's case story going to be, because by all accounts, it seems like out in the real world, people don't like fine woven. And
you can hardly get fine woven now.
And so what's going to happen there? We don't know, but that's an opportunity. Like I bought my wife, she battered her fine woven case and it was awful, and I bought her a leather case from a non-Apple supplier that's very
Bring back
nice.
the dead cows. Yeah.
So that's my guess is that there's money changing hands and they're paying up to get the details.
You inspired me, Alex, because I got the Peak case because you reminded me of I have all the accessories, and so every time I get a new phone now, whether it's a Pixel or an iPhone, I just get the Peak case but I'm going to wait because of the last time they got it wrong. So this time I'm going to wait till they get it right.
And I talked to someone at CES years ago, and they talked about the fact that they were watching all the rumor sites. They didn't really dig into what they had to do it. Yeah. And they said sometimes the first version of it doesn't fit as perfectly but they get printouts. I mean, they print them and they're figuring it all out, and they're using all the data that they have there and everything else to try to get it just right. Because the point is everyone buys the case. Your decision about what you're going to put that phone into happens for many people in the first 2 weeks of the launch, and
it's got to be like 95% of the cases sold in the first month that the phone is out.
I've actually read from suppliers that it's actually worth it to spread your bet, because the first 2 weeks are so lucrative. It's okay to have a couple of different bets in the warehouse and junk an entire run if it doesn't seem to work, or just simply say we've got the 28144A, which will be available at launch. And a month and a half later, you will have the Model B without any change in packaging.
Kind of a testament to how little these cost
the person I
compared to how much they sell for. I mean, it's all profit, I'm sure. And by the way, Peak got double the money because I bought the original one and then I bought the replacement one. So I don't know how much risk there is in all of this for them. I mean, those cases probably cost a couple of bucks and they sell them for 60.
Yeah, it seems wasteful, but it's good business if you do the math. Is the truth of it, right?
The person I talked to at CES, they said that they'd rather return them. Like they just rather have them returned. Like you just push them out into the system. So when you buy it early,
what happens with those?
Do you think Apple wants us not to have cases at all, though? I mean, that's when they're looking at a capacitive
that's just crazy talk. Like I get it, but it's expensive. It's an expensive. I spend $2,000 with the Apple Care and everything else. It's like $2,000 for the phone,
right?
And I'm going to put it in a case. I drop mine all the time.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't use a case, and I think Apple would love.
You raw dog it? Is that what we're calling it? That's what the kids are calling it now.
That's not what they're calling it, Leo. So I don't use a case. I haven't had a problem with it. Now, I'm not going to knock on the wood of my desk now, but what I would say is I think the people who design Apple's phone fundamentally don't think of cases when they design it because they want it to be a beautiful object. And I think that maybe are they lying to themselves? I do think they are, but I think that they've just decided that they want that core product to be beautiful, and that if people want to put a case on it and dress it up in some way, they'll let them. I do think it was interesting. My daughter has a clear case. They make a clear case for the iPhone, and there's something to be said for that because then you get to see the iPhone and the color and all of that. But I think the beauty of it is there are good cases out there, and people like them and use them. There was a time when the phone was so slippery that I felt like you had to have a case on it, and it is better designed now where it doesn't feel that slippery. So I don't use them.
I think that I'm absolutely with Alex that I take really good care of my phones, but accidents happen. They get dropped. They fall out of pockets. And just like I talked about, I think a couple of weeks ago, how I scratched the glass on my my Pixel phone. First time in my entire history of using phones that I've scratched the glass. And that has turned me into, okay, the next time I buy a phone, I'm going to have a screen protector on it for the very first time. That's the thing that you do. All you have to do is break one phone to realize that it's $30 is not a whole lot of money to spend for that sort of thing. On an iPhone, though, it has the extra advantage that because the trade-in value is so great on an iPhone, you absolutely want to be able to hand it in, whether you're handing it over to a partner or a kid or just trying to get a rebate on it. You want that to be as pristine as possible, and that means putting it in a case. Jason, do you remember during AntennaGate when Apple and Steve Jobs had that really like kind of embarrassing circus about, oh, come on, it's not a problem. I can't believe that people are thinking it's a problem. It's not a problem. And they've invited like a whole bunch of commentators and reporters, not everybody, but a certain into town hall. And John Gruber during the Q&A afterwards, after Steve Jobs, we'll give you these bumper cases if you really think that this imaginary problem is a real problem. I liked how Gruber has just basically asked like the 5 executives, do any of you like actually carry like your iPhones in a case? And of course they whipped out their phones and said, oh no, look, no. I've got no case on it.
Because they get a free one if they drop Edge.
That was Steve and Phil and Tim Cook actually was at the AntennaGate press conference. And no, I think you're right, Leo, right? They work at Apple. Getting a replacement phone is cheap. And also Apple Park is a magical place where phones, the laws of physics are slightly different than the phones. Just there's a blast of air right at floor level that cushions any dropped phones so that it's fine.
That's actually where like Gurman's getting wrong on all those robot rumors. It's actually these little tiny little like Star Wars robots that just scurry around with pillows just to make sure that if a phone drops, it will be there and it'll catch it.
I want to invite you all to bring your camera phones or your cameras or whatever it is you want to take pictures with, because we're doing a photo walk in New York City on Saturday. Everybody is invited. We're going to have a meetup. So there's 40% chance of rain right now, but I don't care. We're going to have a meetup in Bryant Park.
Beautiful in the rain.
Yeah, I'll have a umbrella. Bring your umbrellas in case. I don't think it'll be a hard rain. It's also going to be a welcome cooling rain if it does come.
And it'll do something about that pee smell on the sidewalk.
Yes.
So, silver lining.
It actually accentuates it because it rehydrates it. And so
there you go.
Always fun in New York City when it rains. But anyway, I love New York City. I was born there. It smells like home to me. Which is not a commentary on how my house smells. Oh, God, never mind. Forget I said anything. Bryant Park, 3 to 5 p.m. Saturday, the September 7th. Come on out. Say hi. It's a no host, no nothing because there's no bar. That's another reason it's in Bryant Park. It's up to you to bring your own hot dogs. And then at 5 p.m., Joe, who's in our club and is a very accomplished street photographer, is going to take us on a wonderful, magical mystery tour through Manhattan, starting with Grand Central Station, ending, time permitting, with the Oculus. There's a subway ride in the middle taking us down to Washington Square Park. It's all going to be, the reason I wanted to do it at 5 is I want to do it in the golden hour. So we're going to get some beautiful shots. And our guide will be a guy who shoots New York City every single day. So I cannot wait for that. I hope I'll see you Saturday at Bryant Park. And that means that's the beginning of my vacation, which means I won't be here Sunday for TWiT. Jason's going to take over MacBreak Weekly on Tuesday. Got a bunch of co-hosts, Micah, Jason, Devendra is going to do the first, or is it the second? I think Ian Thompson's doing the first TWiT, Devendra Hardawar doing the second TWiT, and then I'll be back on the 22nd for TWiT, if all goes well. My flight arrives at noon. I think I can get home by 2. We shall see. I might be a little raggedy when I get home after the vacation. Looking forward to that. The show today brought to you by Veeam, a new sponsor. Welcome, Veeam. You know, without your data, your customer trust turns to digital dust. Oh, I made a little poem. That's nice. That's why Veeam's data protection and ransomware recovery ensures that you can secure and restore your enterprise data wherever and whenever you need it, no matter what happens. Can I say that again? Data protection and ransomware recovery. I always wonder when you hear about these big companies that pay millions of dollars in ransom to get their data back. Didn't they have backups? They didn't have Veeam. That's the problem. As the #1 global market leader in data resilience, Veeam, Veeam, is trusted by over 77% of the Fortune 500. Wait a minute. That's quite a number. 77% of the Fortune 500 use Veeam to keep their businesses running when digital disruptions like ransomware strike. You don't hear about those businesses in the headlines, just the ones that don't use Veeam. Oh no, they lost all the data. That's because if you're using Veeam, you can back up and recover your data instantly across your entire cloud ecosystem. You can proactively detect malicious activities so you can even stop it in its tracks. Remove the guesswork by automating your recovery plans and policies. Everybody needs to do this. Get real-time support from ransomware recovery experts should you need it. Veeam. Data is the lifeblood of your business, so get data resilient with Veeam. Veeam. Go to veeam.com to learn more. Veeam. We thank them so much for supporting MacBreak Weekly. Veeam.com. Check it out. Everybody's left except Andy. Thank you for not leaving.
I'm always going to be there for you. I don't have an active family life. I'm just glad to be talking to somebody.
Everybody just ran out the door. Oh, now we've lost Landy. No, that's them fooling around. Did you turn off your picture? Oh, there we go. Okay. Jason has come back. It's good to have you, Jason.
Oh, was that ad short?
It was short. I'm jealous because everybody gets to leave during the ads except me. I'm stuck here the whole show. I can't go anywhere.
That's not true. You can disappear and then we all just talk a long time.
Okay. Now you've told us the secret. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It's true. I will start a contentious subject.
Or a Vision Pro segment.
And then leave.
Fair.
Well, I'm looking at a Mokin. I've never heard of the brand before. MOKIN, lowercase I, 10 gigabits per second, USB-C hub, Ethernet 7-in-1 USB-C adapter, $26.99.
If you can afford it, there's only one to get. It's the one I'm using right now, which is actually it's all wired in, so I can't take it out. But it's the what's the name of it? I forgot. You know what I'm talking about? The expensive one. Oh,
are you talking about a powered hub? Are you talking about
yes, the Cal Digit?
I'm looking for a portable one, something I can.
Yeah, it's not affordable. It's hundreds of dollars.
Like this. No, I have that on my desk at home.
But okay. So there you go. You just don't want to carry that around. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. This is the mobile Skywatch 3000 mobile podcast unit.
There are a couple that I've used for a long time that I really like, but again, unlike the Cal Digit, I can't remember the name. I did buy an Anchor, which I've retired. I wasn't real happy about that one. I should start a Vision Pro segment and leave, but I'm not. So there, because we have not yet even scratched the surface of what Mark Gurman said on Sunday. Boy, he loaded us up. Mm-hmm. Let's start with no USB-A ports on the M4 Mac Pro Mini.
Mac Mini. Yeah, Mac Mini.
At some point, we lost the FireWire 800 and the FireWire 400, and the A is. I mean, I have so few cables now that
I guess it makes sense.
Yeah,
everything could be C.
It's kind of time,
and
also he goes on to say that he also believes that it's instead of having USB A's, it's going to have 5 USB C's.
Great.
Not
More
only
is
that,
better.
Not only that, but 3 in the back, 2 in the front, which I insist that we start calling the mullet configuration.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But the idea of
there's
having
a joke there somewhere.
But the idea of having like ports in the front for accessibility, I'm glad that if they had some sort of a dogma about, I know we won't blemish it with any sort of a cutout facing the user and facing the world. Like, no, that's actually very useful.
The Mac Studio showed that they had given up on that, but yeah. I think he said that there'll be 5 ports on the M4 Pro model. I'm not sure if the M4 base will have that many. It probably will not, but yeah, I mean, it's very funny because he gives these reports that are sort of vague, the good information but vague, and then very clearly his listeners were like, no, you need to talk about ports and you need to talk about the power supply. Tell us now, and the answer is no external power supply. It's going to be like all these other things.
That's wild. It'll be like the Apple TV.
Like the Apple TV or the Mac Mini.
Cow.
Or the current Mac Mini, right? They can do good internal power supplies. And so it'll be no external power supply and a bunch of USB-C. And that's USB-A ports are big and you've got a teeny tiny thing. So I think it makes sense.
And they're slow. They're big and slow.
And they're slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, one of the big reasons they use them is because you can when you're branching off of a Thunderbolt bus, you can stick a bunch of USB A's in there for free, basically. And so they were kind of saying, "Oh yeah, more ports," when they didn't really have a lot of lanes. And I think this time they're just going to embrace being
actually more germane. I don't think it's often covered, but you could have 5 ports that all come off the same chip, or you could have 5 ports that come off 5 chips, or any other combination thereof, and that makes a big difference, right?
Yeah, I mean it can, and in some cases, like the Mac Studio, I believe the Ultra configuration, the front ports are Thunderbolt.
No, the front ports on Mac Studio are USB-C, and the back ports are Thunderbolt, I believe.
No, but I think on the Ultra configuration, I believe the front ports are Thunderbolt, but on the Max configuration, they're not. And that's one example where like we don't have enough Thunderbolt lanes to do that, so it's just USB on the front and it's a Thunderbolt on the back, and you can kind of mix and match. And the USB-A is even cheaper to branch off, which is why they did that with the Mac Mini on the base configs. But again, USB-A, it's time. I mean, if you think about it, Apple introduced USB-A to the Mac with the iMac in 1998. It's had a good run.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the big deal, though, on that first iMac was no floppy drive. Or no, it was the second one that had no floppy drive.
No, it had no floppy drive
ever.
Everything.
No floppy drive. And instead, they said, no, don't worry about it. You got USB-A ports.
And I think that you could argue that I think USB-A is the connector that's probably lasted longer than any other connector.
It's the Sony mini disc of connectors.
But no, I think longer than a mini disc. I think literally, I think it is. I think that if I think back on it, I can't think of any connector that lasted 25 years. You know, like that we've used.
It's staggering.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
It really is amazing, and it's evolved. The connector has evolved, or the format's evolved over time. But that I when I was writing about the anniversary of the G3 iMac. One of the things I did is I got a little USB plug adapter for USB A to C, and I plugged that terrible mouse from the original iMac into my modern Mac Studio running Apple Silicon. And you know what? Just works. It's bad, but it just works.
Because it works no worse than it did when it was new. Yeah.
And on my Mac Mini or my Mac Studio, I can plug it in without an adapter.
Yeah.
And it works. And it's been so long. It's really kind of amazing.
Yeah, and also I'm so glad that the world seems to have divorced itself from let's have a standard connector. We can have lots of different kind of traffic through that connector, but let's at least say that here is this connector that we are going to transact everything on. And I don't mind that like this. Sometimes it's power, sometimes it might be low speed USB, sometimes it might be high speed USB, sometimes it might be Lightning, sometimes it might be DisplayPort. But the fact that at the end of the day, I have one set of cables for 90% of what I have to do, and I don't have to worry about what I pack. That is such an advance forward.
Basically, I use these like crazy. Yeah. Is it okay to use these? I mean, that's just a USB A to C adapter. I have. Yeah. So it's not like we're going to lose
pin to pin. Yeah.
A lot of my keyboards. Somebody's pointing out that most of the older Keychron's use A. But I would just put this at the end of it, and that's
or you buy a new cable, depending. I mean, I
think they're removable. Yeah,
it's not a big deal to like. At some point, I think people are just in the process of transitioning their bag of cables from A to C to C to C, and this will just say, "Oh, well, yes. instead of I can leave at home just like I started leaving at home the micro USB cables that I had inside the mix in my travel bag. Those will get weaned away. This is nothing like when they announced the iMac and suddenly, the USB is the wave of the future. Someday you'll find out that we were right about predicting this. Yeah, but right now I have nothing that connects to this, and I have to not just buy new cables, I have to buy new accessories if I just want to connect this thing to a printer.
I have a bunch of Anchor plugs that have Type A on them, and all.
So this is nothing like that. So that's fine.
Yeah, I mean we have adapters. So just to be clear, the M4. He's talking about the Mac Mini, and by the way, these are probably not out till October. Right. The M4 Pro version will have 5 ports, all C, 3 on the back and 2 in the front, like the Mac Studio,
right. And Ethernet,
HDMI, and headphone. Woohoo!
Yep.
That's pretty awesome. But as you said, that's the Mac Mini Pro. There'll be a Mac Mini, you think, non?
There'll be a base M4 model, and that is going to be interesting, right? Like, do they omit Ethernet? Do they omit HDMI? Do they omit what doesn't fit on there? What is the M4 incapable of providing that they do to differentiate with it? I hope they don't get rid of Ethernet, because they did that on the Apple TV, but like, I feel like the Mac Mini use case, so many of them, you want it to be wired somewhere.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but my guess is it'll still have that, but it'll just have whatever, 2 ports on the back.
Yeah, I think, or having 3 on the back and none on the front, or something like that, like none where it goes down.
Yeah.
I think getting rid of those ports would probably be something that I could probably handle. If they took out almost anything else on the back, the power, the Ethernet, the HDMI, and maybe they could go down to 2 ports but 2 ports get pretty complicated if you have a keyboard that you want to tie in.
You're going to get a dongle.
But
they do that with the Air. Why wouldn't they do that with the Mini?
Yeah, and it could be. I mean, especially if they can get if giving those things up, even if it went down to 1 USB and you have to get a dongle, if giving those up got us to $399 or $299, it would be like it'd be otherworldly. Like getting a. I mean, it'd be devastating. I mean, $299 for a Mac Mini M4, which is almost impossible. I give it a 1% chance.
It's not gonna happen.
But I think $399 starts to get. You don't think so?
I'd be amazed if it's $499, which was the original Mac Mini price, which would actually be a sub 500 would be really great. But I think what will gate the features is literally the capabilities of the M4, right? We know that with the M1 and M2, there were limitations in terms of Thunderbolt. There were limitations in terms of external display support, right? Where you could have like a Thunderbolt and an HDMI, and that was it. But we've seen with the M3 that they've unlocked some of that. And we don't know about the M4 because it's just in the iPad. So we don't really know what its capabilities are, but I'm sure that that's what will constrain it. That the number of ports it'll have will be, and its video capabilities will entirely be based on whatever they built into that M4.
What will we get in the M4? I mean, all I have is an M4 iPad, which I'm looking at.
Right.
What will be new and different from the existing M3s?
Well, it's so it'll be on the we'll finally be able to do an apples to apples comparison of M3 to M4, which we can't do with the iPad because it went M2 to M4. Right. So it's off of that old 3nm process on the new one. They say that there are some improved stuff in it. I would imagine that it will not be dramatically faster and better than the M3 when you compare them directly, but it's that iterative thing, and for Apple, they just want to get off of that 3nm process and get everything up to, because there's a bunch of stuff that's still on M2, and then there's some stuff that's on M3, and they want to get everything to M4. So this is the start of that process too.
Gurman says suppliers are scheduled to begin shipping Mac Mini units from China with a standard M4 chip to warehouses now, early September. The higher end version with an M4 Pro won't begin shipping until October.
Yeah, that's the new chip that doesn't exist yet, right?
Doesn't exist.
That's a new chip.
That probably means neither will be announced until about a month after the iPhone unveiling, which is Monday.
And I should say, just like the iPad, the Mac Mini never got an M3 update, so it's going to be coming from M2, and it gets all of those kind of improvements over 2 generations of
honestly, I'm running this whole show from here on a couple of M1 Mac Minis that are great.
That Mac Mini Pro configuration, M4 Pro, like I've definitely had friends of mine say, I'm not sure I even need to wait for a Mac Studio at this point. Yeah.
In fact, one of them's an 8 gigabyte RAM. That was the one we ran Zoom ISO on for a year or 2.
Well, and with a lot of production, again, I have a Mac Studio, but I have a bunch of Mac Minis. I'd rather buy more Mac Minis than buy other big computers. Like each one of them has their own role in what they're doing in production, and I just use them for everything.
Right.
And it really changed with the M1. I mean, the M1 Mac Mini, the performance jumped so high compared to the last version of the Mac Mini. It went from being glued to a production device overnight.
The Mac, starting around, this is Gurman again, starting around the end of this year, transitioning to M4, extending that into the first half or so of 2025.
Yeah.
Next month, the new Mac Mini, iMac, and MacBook Pro, all M4. Will there be an M4 Ultra? Will it just be M4 and M4 Pro?
That's the mystery. My guess is yes, because Mark said that they're going to turn over everything, and that means that the Pro and the Studio will presumably happen next year, and that will be the M4 Ultra, and then they'll be entirely on M4 for the Mac. They're going to turn, according to him, the entire product line is going to turn over, which is exciting because that hasn't happened since M1, I think. So it's good. It's a good thing.
He also talks a lot about the succession because, one of the big stories this week is Luca Maestri, CFO at Apple, is transitioning out at the end of this year. But like others before him, I'm thinking Schiller, Johnny Ive, many others, he's going to kind of keep a foot in the door, not doing his original job, but keeping a few other things. There'll be a new CFO will take over January 1st. How do you pronounce that? Is it Kevin Parekh? Anyway,
Parekh, maybe.
Parekh?
I mean, we'll find out on the next call, probably.
Yeah.
I'll miss Luca and his Italian accent that was increasingly better transcribed by AI transcription engines.
That's funny.
Over his tenure, it got better and better and better at that. And but this is they don't executives at Apple don't leave, they ascend to.
They try to leave. Remember Bob Mansfield quitting?
Yep.
And then we just imagine this boardroom meeting where they said, "Here is a bag of money, Bob.
Yeah, please come back, Bob."
You don't have to do anything. Just take the money.
Gurman's report really nailed it, especially about Johnny Ive, but in general, the idea that they were so vulnerable at that time after Steve Jobs died that like they would pay any price to make it seem that Johnny Ive wasn't leaving, even if he was disconnected from a lot of design responsibilities, because they didn't want the market to think that Apple was rudderless. And I do think that is one of these things. I think also, though, it's just a retention issue. You have given so many stock options to these people that none of them need to work anymore.
That's the problem.
How do you get them from completely retiring? And the answer is you give them some sort of new title with Phil Schiller. Did he write his own title to be an Apple fellow? Because Luca has a different title apparently, but it's very much the same thing, which is we're going to take a lot of your burden away, but keep you around to watch your lieutenant as they do that job just in case. And then you'll have some stuff. So with Phil, it's events and the App Store. And, he's no longer in charge of marketing. He's got Greg Joswiak to do that job for him. But, like, he's still there, though.
Well, and somehow I don't feel like Phil is running around right now going, you got to finish the edit. You got to finish the edit. We got money. Oh, my God. I feel like Phil's sitting back.
It's one layer less, so it's less stressful. But it's also the answer to the question, how do I get you, who has enough money that you never need to work again, to stay involved at Apple at some point? And the answer is you offer them more money to do less and keep them around.
And only do the things that they love to do. Like here's the deal. Like you pick what you want and you get to do whatever you want, and we'll pay you what you've been paid before.
Picked the car project, which might have been a mistake.
Gurman actually, Alex Gurman said this about Eddie Q. He's like, Eddie Q will probably transition at some point, right? And Eddie Q is going to be like, what can I do with about sports?
I know what he'll do. He's going to make the Sunday gravy every Sunday.
And like he'll pick the fun stuff and then leave the crappy stuff to his successor. Yeah.
So that makes sense too, though, from a transition. Thinking about running a company, ideal would be that the person leaving is there to advise the person who took the position.
If you have the money,
you don't want to do it that way. We did it this way.
If you have the money and the means, this is absolutely what you should do: is keep them in the family. Don't let them go somewhere else. Don't let them consult somewhere else. Let them feel free and semi-retired, but keep them close. And then if there's a fire, they can come and help you put it out, and you can tap their wisdom. Like this, I really do think this is the way you do it if you can afford it, and if there aren't like personality clashes. And just from my own personal life, my uncle was the chief negotiator for the union for a big glass and plastic company, and he retired. And like a year later, they called him and said, can we put you on a consulting contract to negotiate all our contracts, because nobody here knows how to do that, and we need to get up to speed and all that. And I always thought like that's kind of smart. Keep your guy close, because you may need to ask him for advice later.
And not many companies can afford.
And your enemies close. Right?
Well, the funny thing is that it's not that many companies that can afford to say, you know what, we're just going to keep an extra person on for each one of these positions. But it creates so much continuity. Yeah, Apple can. And it creates so much continuity. And it means that you're giving the new person all the responsibility of doing it without putting them out into the never land of just having to figure it out. And it is a perfect way to do transitions. It's just very expensive.
So the paragraph that caught my eye, again, this is all from Kerman's newsletter Sunday. 3 of the biggest transitions will involve COO Jeff Williams, services head Eddie Q, and of course Cook himself.
Sure.
Cook will probably become Apple's executive chairman when he hands off the CEO job. And this is the thing that raised my eyebrows. To whom I believe, just a note there, Mark, to whom I believe will be hardware engineering chief John Ternus. That's a little bit out of left field. Did you see that coming?
Mark Gurman's reported that before. That's actually not new. Everybody's.
Okay.
I think what's new is that he just said it, right? Like he just put it out there.
Yeah. It's going to be Ternus,
and that Cook is going to be like a chairman or something, and then that's how they'll do the transition. So he might have a little more detail, but I think really the story is just that he feels confident that is still the case because he has reported that Ternus is the favorite.
He's now, and you see him on the events. You'll see him probably on Monday. Sure. He's the senior vice president for hardware engineering.
I think what Mark has said before is that if something happened to Cook, like right now, Jeff Williams might be the CEO, but the long-term plan is for Ternus to take the job.
See, that's what I thought, because Cook was the COO who then replaced Steve Jobs. Yeah. The COO, the chief operating officer, knows where the bodies are buried.
But Williams is not much younger than Cook, I think, is part of the issue there.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I think the idea here is that this is not, for Cook at least, it's not imminent, and probably not for Jeff Williams. Eddie Q, I wonder sometimes, like he seems to be loving life. I mean, every time I interviewed him when, like earlier this year, and like he's just the lord of his domain and having a great time and meeting famous people and hanging out and making money. So like he might do it forever, but I do feel like, Cook probably got a good 5 years in him easy, right? But at some point you do need to do succession planning, and everybody points at Disney and what a dreadful job Bob Iger has done grooming people who then he kicks out and it ends up with no CEO that will stick with the company. So I think Apple knows, and this is it. Mark really went to town on this story. He mentions John Browett, who they hired to do retail and was a disaster and was fired after 6 months. Angela Ahrens, who was never seen as a good fit. She stayed for 5 years, and I think she had some good ideas. But the bigger point there is you can't hire at this level outside Apple. Mm-hmm. You can hire at a lower level and bring them along, but culturally you have to hire and let them percolate a long time. So having a long-term succession plan for them is real smart.
Ternus will have been there 25 years before he gets a chance at the big chair.
And pretty much all of them have been there pretty much since the near-death experience. Like, like so I think that definitely
Ternus
still affects
is 2001, I think.
It's
that generation is the one that's retiring, right? Is the one that was actually there in those late 90s times. And the next, it will be interesting, right? Because
the quote unquote depression, the depression crew, the Apple's greatest generation,
You need people at Apple who are still like taking extra sweetened loaves from the diner because they remember when they couldn't afford to buy them. Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing: is I mean, my dad was born during the Depression, and he always like fixed things with bits of wire from a wire hanger and stuff. Like it was serious. I would argue that maybe you need some people who are not in that mentality, so that they can do something like not try to cadge every dollar they can out of the App Store.
Well, you can already see the change happening. We went from no buttons to 8 buttons on the iPhone. I mean,
the war on buttons is over.
The war on buttons ended. So did the butterfly keyboard. There's a lot of things that we never thought would change have changed. In fact, there is a rumor that Apple's looking, or maybe it's just a patent, at a touch screen for the laptop.
Oh yeah, I still my Apple TV controller. I was fine with them adding all the buttons. What makes me upset is that I have to use them. I still use the older iPhone a couple generations back, and I was able to just ignore. I was able to ignore the buttons until like the last update, and now they're like the pause. You can't just push because I just never needed the buttons. So I did, and now I'm stuck with that. So the only concern I have about them adding buttons is like, oh, they're going to make us actually use them to do things.
But that is a legitimate question. Like there's the monkey house effect, where this press came from the guy on Project Runway saying that like you work in the monkey house for long enough, you get blind to how much it stinks, and it takes someone brand new to come in to say, oh my God, what is this rank? And so, I mean, one of Apple's greatest assets as a corporation is that it is a culture, and it is a monoculture, which means that you have everybody who's basically working together and working towards the same goal. But there needs to be somebody who really points at a couple of different things which I won't mention, but they're just like peculiar to my perspective, saying that's messed up, man. We got to stop doing that.
I think that what's interesting is that I still think that a lot of Apple's production process is built around the fact that Steve could only pay attention to so many things at the same time, and so they do one product or a handful of products, and they kind of, there's like the Steve eye that was always paying attention to one thing at a time, and I think they do give up a lot. I still think that they could do their own home devices and it would do really well. They, again, $3 to $5 billion a year. Right. Like it wouldn't be the iPhone money, but it would be, like real money for most companies. They could do a lot of that type of thing. I think that they really underinvest in support. Totally. For a lot of their products. Yep. Training, support, answer Q&As.
And I think that's the depression mentality that we're talking about, which, it's hard though, right? It's hard to say you got to throw some of your playbook out, because the playbook is what got them to be one of the most valuable companies in the world and be on top of the world when they were about to go bankrupt. And that's the Steve Jobs playbook, and it has worked. And so it's easy for us to roll in and say, you need to change your playbook a little bit. And I think they do, because like so many aspects of what they do have worked so well. But you're absolutely right, Alex, that there are missed opportunities that they just won't go for. And then there are other ones they choose to go in and then not invest properly for it to be a success. And I think those are also kind of like side effects of that mentality that brought them back from the brink to be incredibly successful, but maybe have led to little quirks in their personality where they're not as efficient.
And I do want to know who's responsible for slow fees, though. Whoever that is, I hope he's gone.
Well, and I think that the issue is also that they slow fees. Did that go anywhere? That did not go anywhere. I don't even know how to do it.
That sounds like slang for something that parents don't want their kids involved in.
Don't take slow fees.
It's a Finsta, you mean?
But I think that there's something like, what's funny is that I was thinking, well, it'd be really great. Like Google experiments with all these things, but the reality is Google AdWords and display ads pay for everything at Google, and they keep on experimenting with all these other devices, but nothing ever works. Nothing else does anything.
No,
but there's an energy and a funness to what they're doing. And same thing with Facebook. They have a lot of experimentation, but they're really, they just sell ads, and I think that they have, but I feel like there's a certain energy to experimenting with those things and I think that the headset is an experimentation. We'll see how it goes. But I think that that's a game that you can play. I still think that the big thing with Apple, I think, is that I think that they are a little slow at stuff, but when you look at the other companies, when Apple starts rolling down a path, you have a fair idea. Like, I don't know initially how successful the headset will be, but I know that Apple will do it for the next 5 years. There'll be two more versions of this before they decide they're not going to do that. Because once it gets out of the gate, like they canceled, I don't know how tens of billions of dollars they spent on the car, and they canceled it didn't feel like they had to release it. Like it, like it's, and I know many people that used to work at Apple that say that there's products that they saw that they would have happily bought and put in their living room, and Apple just decided, this market's not big enough.
But just wrapping up on the playbook, like the thing, as we're talking about that, like that is absolutely true. That's hard. Shareholders are not going to tell you that, well, this plan that you've been following for the past 10 years, that's made you grow into a $3 trillion company. We're scared that you're sticking to it. That's never going to happen. But nonetheless, Polaroid stuck to a successful playbook. Sears, Roebuck stuck to a very successful playbook. They didn't use
Red Lobster. Don't forget Red Lobster. Stuck to a very successful.
R.I.P. Cheddar biscuits. I mean, at some point, and you could say that part of their trying to avoid getting blockbustered is their move into services. But there is also the idea of, again, someone who's outside the monkey house can say, why aren't we doing this? We have all the components to move into this direction in addition to the stuff that we're doing. We have the capability to do it. We have the resources. It's a good experiment, and it's a good gamble. Why don't we have another, in the category of other bets, why don't we try doing this?
Yeah, and I think that why they keep winning also is just that, I think I mentioned this before, but we're watching this Billy Joel thing when he just said, he said, I'm just good at doing the thing. He was a 60-minute interview, and he just goes, you're surrounded by people who are not very good at doing the thing. You look extraordinary. And he goes, but I'm not extraordinary. He said, I just know how to write basically good songs, and basically, and obviously Billy Joel's an incredible performer, but but what I think about is with Apple is a lot of times what you see that you don't see in a lot of other companies is logistics, like this heavy. Just they're gonna think about it, and they're gonna think about they have the ability, they have the money, they have all the things to go. If we're gonna do this the right way, what would it look like? And
that's the Tim Cook. We don't talk about Jobs gets all the credit, but Jobs brought Tim in, and Apple was in dire straits logistically. Right, they had huge amounts of excess inventory that they had to move and take charges against, and all of that. And that's what Cook made his name at and is great at, and he doesn't get enough credit for, because you're exactly right. To work at the scale that they do and be as efficient as they are, and take stuff off the table that competitors want, and then the competitors turn around and can't get it because Apple already bought it. Like that is a huge part of their game that is completely invisible to the consumer.
We're gonna need a buttload of this type of RAM in 4 years. Let's lock that up right now. We don't know exactly how we're gonna need this kind of manufacturing in 5 years, but we know we're gonna need it. So let's start the ball rolling on that too. Yeah.
And even down to the events. I mean, you can decide whether you agree or don't agree on the whether they should do them live or not. I think that they're much better now than they were before. Is that they keep on turning the dial up on that event. Like the hard part is they just keep on. The iPhone event is usually the biggest one, and half the fun of watching the event next week will be watching the production value for me. It's like they just keep, but they're willing to spend into that, and they're willing to they just keep bringing the best teams, the best processes forward to do that in a way that you don't see. I mean, I don't know if you see anybody else doing it at that level, as a corporation.
I mean, the fact that during the last event we were actually discussing when the haircut dropped his skydiving jumpsuit, was that a real jumpsuit, or did they decide to CG it? Because the fact that we acknowledged that they would absolutely be thinking about that, about the effect they want to get, and B, they would have the resources to apply on something that lasts all of 1.8 seconds in a video in a motion moving camera shot. That shows you how much faith we have and how much attention.
Is that jumpsuit a practical or a CGI effect?
When Federighi does this, it's like.
Well, we'll be watching, and of course next Tuesday, we will get Alex Lindsay's professional opinion on all the special. Or are you not going to be here next Tuesday?
I'm actually working somewhere else on something else next Tuesday. It's killing me.
Well, then you're going to have to watch Office Hours Global, I think.
Special guests.
We have a new show called Extra Hours because we didn't have enough shows. And so Monday night.
Perfect.
We Monday night at 6, we'll do Extra Hours, and that's when we'll discuss it. Yeah. Good. It won't be quite instant. Hours. It'll give us a little time to think about it.
Will you put that up on YouTube, or is
it streams on YouTube? Live? It's 6 o'clock but you have to watch live. 11 episodes in. No, it's recorded. If you look at Extra Hours, we've done 10 episodes so far. That's the one we're using to both. We had people that wanted to watch it that couldn't watch it in the morning. And also, it's just a little slower. It's more conversational than the morning show, as well as we're doing it all on the cloud. So we're using VisVector and cloud tools to do the whole thing. So
you're doing it the way you told us to do it, which we thought, well, we're going to let Alex do it that way first and see how it works. We're actually, this is working all right. We're using Still using Zoom ISO for the big shows.
Yeah.
Ecamm in the cloud running on a Mac Studio up at Mac Stadium.
Yep.
It has what is it? What does it have? It's like a 100 gigabit connection. It's got a very fast connection.
Yeah.
So, and then our editors, John Ashley, our TD, Benito, our TD, Kevin King, our TDs, they use Splashtop to log into the Mac Stadium to run Ecamm to do the switching instead of the TriCaster. That's working all right.
Our commitment was that we want to be able to get to a point where we can push a button and it builds all the instances and all of the infrastructure and everything else. And so we wanted to make sure it was all sitting inside of AWS. so like it was just that there was no.
Who's paying that bill? Are you just paying for that out of pocket?
Yes. But it's not that much. I don't do it every day like you do. So, and we're only doing that cloud version once a week. And we have donors. People we are 501c3. Nice. So some of our members have been very have supported us. So it's not all my money. So it's we get donations that cover most of the costs. And so we're
kind of in the same boat, actually.
Yeah. So, but I think that so we only do it once a week, and it's like $12 or $15 an hour.
Oh, that's not bad.
To run. So it costs us, a show costs us $50 or whatever to do.
Yeah, we're also using Restream for some of the shows like Security Now and Windows Weekly,
right? And
offhand shows, and we also use Restream to stream. We are streaming into 7 different platforms now, thanks to Restream.
That's great.
And I think we're going to trade. We were discussing that before the show. Maybe trade Kick for Telegram, because we like to follow the the biggest crooks to whatever platform they go to. No, I'm just teasing. We are. Speaking of which, we are on X. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on X, and we're on Discord for the club members. That's really. I love it. Yeah. I think it brings us a new audience. Hello to all of you watching on those various platforms. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, why did Apple nix part of a child safety bill? And a lot more rumors. You're watching MacBreak Weekly with Alex Lindsay, OfficeHours.global, Andy Ihnatko, WGBH in Boston, and Jason Snell from 6colors.com. Our show today brought to you by Experts Exchange. There's a name, Moss Isley. There's a name I haven't heard. I used to use Experts Exchange all the time. When I was in the early days of the tech guy, if I didn't know the answer to a question, I would go to Experts Exchange. I kind of lost track of them. Had a great conversation with them last month and was blown away. I said, gosh, I want to promote you guys because you are still there with real human beings answering real questions. And in an age of AI and BS, it's nice to have EE. Join a network of trustworthy, talented tech professionals. You can get industry insights, you can get advice, and all from real people who are really using the products in your stack. This will save you money over expensive enterprise-level tech support, and I have to say, you'll probably get better answers too. Experts Exchange is the tech community for people tired of the AI sellout. Experts Exchange is ready to help carry the fight for the future of human intelligence. And the more we use ChatGPT, I think more and more we realize, there's nothing like going to somebody who's really an expert in that area and asking them a question. You get access to experts in over 400 different fields, including coding, AWS, Azure, DevOps, everything. Unlike other places, duplicate questions are encouraged. You don't get the snark you get on many other sites. Oh, you asked that before. That's a stupid question, whatever. No, they're contributors to Tech Junkies, and they are gracious. They love answering all questions. And I realize what the secret is. That is the reward for becoming an expert in something, is being able to pass it on, to pay it forward, to help somebody else become an expert in that. That's who lives at Experts Exchange. One member said, I've never had ChatGPT stop and ask me a question before. That happens on EE all the time. Experts Exchange is proudly committed to fostering a community where human collaboration is fundamental. Their expert directory is full of experts who will help answer whatever questions you have, whether it's management, how to run a network wire, how long can that HDMI cable be? In fact, many of the experts in there are viewers. Like Rodney Barnhart, VMware vExpert. He is a Security Now regular. Edward Van Biljon, who is an ethical hacker and a Microsoft MVP. There are Cisco design professionals. There are executive IT directors and more. And here's something I want to really reassure you about. Other platforms betray their contributors by selling their content to train models. It happens all the time. At Experts Exchange, your privacy is not for sale. They stand against the betrayal of contributors worldwide. They have never and will never sell your data, your content, your likeness. They block and strictly prohibit AI companies from scraping content. By the way, that's a challenge. These AI companies are sneaky little people. But the Experts Exchange puts in the extra effort to keep them from scraping their site to train LLMs. And by the way, moderators strictly forbid the direct use of LLM content in their threads. You're always talking to a real human being when you're on Experts Exchange. Experts Exchange. Experts deserve a place where they can confidently share their knowledge without worrying about a corporation stealing it to increase their shareholder value. And we all deserve a safe haven from AI. Now, Experts Exchange knows there's a lot of people like me who kind of lost track over the last decade. So they've got a great deal for you. 90 days free. You don't even give them a credit card. Just 3 months free because they know you're going to love it and you're going to want to become a member and a participant. e-e.com/twit to learn more. That's another thing. You know they've been around for a while. They have a 3-letter .com domain. e-e.com/twit. Take advantage of at least of the 90-day free offer. Get an idea of what it's like to have real people to communicate with, to collaborate with, to learn from. That's amazing. Or as an expert, to go in there and get the karma points and have the fun of helping somebody else. Experts Exchange, e-e.com/twit. We thank them so much for what they've done over the years. They've helped me so much, and we're so glad to have them on MacBreak Weekly. Andy, you put this story in from the Wall Street Journal. It's kind of a shocker. Tell me what happened here.
So this is a story about Apple lobbyists operating specifically in the state of Louisiana, and the kind of like the real hardball tactics they've been playing against. They're talking about two different incidents, according to lawmakers who work with them on the story. That there was one lawmaker who, after believing for himself, after trying to set up his kid's iPhone for parental controls, he thought that, oh geez, but these parental controls, they're not good. They don't get the job done. Try to add an amendment to an upcoming state child safety bill that basically said that Google and Apple would have to help tools figure out that, okay, the person operating this phone is a child. They don't have to provide personal information, but just there's been a lot of talk in the past couple of years about the phone knows the age of the user. Rather than force every single user of every single social media platform to be age verified, why not just be able to ask the phone, yes or no, is this person under the age of 18? So this lawmaker decided to put this amendment to the bill, and before he even left the floor, he was getting a flurry of texts from Apple lobbyists that are basically telling him to reconsider. This is bad. You're a dupe of Facebook. Facebook wants to put all this responsibility on us. That's terrible. And he went from being told before he introduced the amendment that, oh yeah, this amendment has a really good chance of passing through, shouldn't be a problem, to suddenly, I guess the other senior lawmakers were putting pressure on him via lobbyists that, yeah, maybe you want to get rid of this, and so he was kind of forced to remove it. But another story, which is a little bit more a little bit more racketeer-ish. So this was from 2021. And again, this is a Louisiana state lawmaker who was talking to the Wall Street Journal about this, wanted to basically put regulations on how Apple runs the App Store, not knowing that that's how you get that's how you get hammered really quickly by Apple.
Good luck with that. Yeah.
So he got a call from a lobbyist who said, yeah, you know that movie Emancipation, big budget Apple TV Plus movie with Will Smith that's going to be filming in your state and bringing all those millions of dollars. If you don't drop this, we're going to pull all filming activity from the state of Louisiana, and we're going to induce a fiscal crisis. And Apple says, no, we would never have done this. This is ridiculous that we have done this. But that's what the lawmaker says, and that's consistent with Apple's, I think, tactics, particularly in the lobbying on anything regarding child safety bills.
Yeah, I believe that looking at that article, I think the lobbyists intimated it. I don't think it was quite as explicit as they were going to do it, and the chances of them doing it would be almost zero. Like because it's such a huge logistical change for a film. They would never actually take a film out of a state over this because they just can't. They just couldn't turn the corner. They may choose to not shoot there anymore, which would be probably as damaging. But oftentimes, I mean, I don't know. I spend a lot of time in DC. Lobbyists say a lot of things.
Yeah,
they get paid. They get paid to say it. They just their job is to turn the corner, and they'll say just about anything they can say to move something. I doubt Apple explicitly told them to say that. It's probably unlikely.
But okay. One, this is the lawmaker speaking. So again, we have the word of this one person.
We have the word of a representative, and we know that all of our representatives, everything they say is fact.
And we also know that everything that Apple does through lobbyists is, the lobbyists are lone wolves. They're not doing things on the orders of Apple. But even if those things are true that you're saying, that's like being told that, okay, first of all, like, Ernie is not going to come burn your house down if you don't put his kid on the team like that. I know he threatened that. I know he made you feel as though your life and your property were in danger, and he was wild-eyed. He seemed really interested, but let me assure you, he would never do that. That's intimidation is in itself its own. Is a crime in and of itself. And again,
I also should point out that the Wall Street Journal doesn't have a lot of love for big tech and is notorious for going after big tech. Yeah, but regardless of the truth of it, and I think it feels like it's probably happened, I don't disagree with Apple's position, which is age verification is a terrible idea.
Well,
it's giving up privacy.
I would give that.
It's always going to run up against Apple.
It's up to parents to do that, not Apple.
Yeah, as a parent, I don't want Apple giving that information over.
No.
I control, my kids have to ask for permission. I wish it worked better, but they have to ask for permission to put anything on their phone, and it's not, and I'm not, it's not an age verification thing, but I do think that is a parental domain. As a parent, I think that belongs to me, not to Apple to start doing that.
Okay,
yeah.
But this can be a nuanced sort of discussion. I don't think that necessarily what this amendment was proposing to do is necessarily the right thing to do. However, as a principle, I have a problem with trillion-dollar companies saying, "Trust us, we're not going to abuse your kids. Trust us, we are not going to let something happen on our platform that makes us an enormous amount of money, but and exposes your child to ideas of self-harm, poor body image, bad mental habits. We would never do that. Trust us. You don't need to pass any laws that make us responsible if such an outcome were to occur." So establish that. Establish that. Number two, the question becomes, if we pass laws protecting children who use social media networks and other services, how do we separate children who are affected, who come under this law, from people who do not? I feel as though part of I think there's a reasonable discussion to be had if it is possible for Google and Apple not to say, here is the identity of the person using this phone, here is their birth date, here is this other information. Simple yes, no. Is this person under 18 or are they not? If they are not under 18, then they can sign up for this new account. If they are under 18, they need to get approval through our parental control, through whatever parental controls you have.
And is it 18 or is it 16 or 15 or is it?
There are a couple of different laws that are making their way through the federal Senate right now. For instance, to change COPA so that marketing to children and tracking children that way, just simply raising the age from 12 to 16, I think it is. The other bills are making
the revised COPA is 18.
Okay, 18. I'm sorry. And other bills that are being discussed now set the bar at 18. And no, I do agree with you that this is something that parents should be primarily responsible for. However, again, my fail here is I don't like the idea of simply saying, you can trust us. We're a $1 trillion company. We got this way by making sure that we do things that are ethically completely pure and that all of our employees are absolutely proud of. So that's why I'm saying that I'm not necessarily closing the door on that kind of use of technology or that kind of responsibility of Apple and Google. Again, not to necessarily police things, but to simply say thumbs up, thumbs down, child or not
thumbs
child.
Up.
There's no private way to do age verification, and we've had Shoshana Weissman on TWiT many times. She wrote a very good piece at her organization, ourstreet.org, about why age verification is always an impossible thing to do, whether it's Apple or an app company or a social media company. So, and I should say, if Apple were caught doing this quid pro quo, it would be, maybe they were, it's a black mark on Apple. It seems like a big risk to do. Jason, you made a very interesting point though in our Discord. Do you want to say it out loud?
I just wanted to say to that other story about Apple was threatening to pull out of Louisiana and put pressure on a politician. I just wanted to point out that the entire process of making movies in locations is politics, because the only reason they were making that movie there is they got a 40% tax credit from the state of Louisiana, right? So, we leaving the rest of this discussion aside for a minute, just to say that the entire decision about when movies get made or not is political. It has to do with kickbacks from the state government, and then going to a politician in the state and saying, I thought we had a relationship. They literally have an existing financial relationship with the kickbacks, and therefore, it's ugly. And Louisiana politics, my understanding is super corrupt. Historically, anyway, the indictments flow. Maybe that's just me as a 49er fan saying that. But it's very clear that there's a lot of bribery that has happened in the past in Louisiana. I'm just saying basically where you shoot a movie and where you produce the VFX, where you do all of that is a wretched hive of scum and villainy in general.
Well, and it's so complicated, and you're talking about a lobbyist who probably doesn't even know the person that would make a decision on the movies.
Yeah,
it's so
even if he said
it's someone
no
pulling,
way he could
it's someone pulling something out of a dark place and making stuff up. It's not like they're and that happens all the time with lobbyists.
But in fact, I would say
Oliver doesn't even know where he would get a gun. So I don't know why you're worried.
I mean, I'm just saying it, and I think it's somewhere in there.
It's the threat that is the problem. And
I agree with you, but we don't have any evidence. It's just this one guy who says it. Apple denies it. Furthermore, if Apple's fighting against age verification schemes, they're fighting a good fight. That's an important fight. I wouldn't want them to threaten pulling productions from a state, but this is an important fight that all the tech companies should fight, and legislators need to hear what a bad idea age verification is. It's just not doable.
Well, and I think that Apple's very binary in the sense that they just don't want to give information to anybody about their users. So the thing is that anything that says they're going to fight everything tooth and nail if it says I have to give information of any kind to a third party, because they think they basically have a very low opinion of everybody and how they use their data, and their opinion is not necessarily inaccurate, that everybody wants that data. I mean, basically that check of are you over 18 or under 18 or over 16 or under 16, whatever that number is, Facebook would be able to develop your birthday like that, because they're going to ask every day.
But it's up to parents. It's up to parents.
Yeah.
It's up to parents.
Would you have a problem with the when the parent sets up parental controls, if there were simply a toggle to say, it is okay not to give my child's identity, not my birth date or birth year, but simply to say that if a app or service wants to ask, is this user of this phone underage or subject to parental controls on the phone.
I understand what you're saying, but here's the other issues. If a kid is gay and his parents don't like that, and he's 16 and he wants to set up a Gmail account, there are legitimate reasons, or he wants to go browse the web to find out information about how he's feeling inside. There are legitimate reasons why it shouldn't be the parent's choice. So this is a very complicated issue.
Well, okay.
And I think that to say, oh, make Apple do it, or make Facebook do it, or make an app do it is a terrible, terrible solution. I understand that there are legislators and there are parents who are desperate to protect kids. And I support that. I think that's great. I understand your feelings. But you need to also understand technologically what you're proposing is a very bad idea.
Okay, I totally understand all of that. But the thing is, I don't tie in that one idea, a binary setting, a binary disclosure, with everything else. COSA, for instance, it was very, very bad when it was first introduced in 2022. But since then, it's been rewritten, it's been amended, and it says things like this law is not meant to, should not be construed as a reason to prevent any child from finding information on the internet that they go out and seek. Or essentially, you can have these kind of controls. You can have these kinds of laws that are designed to protect children that don't do the sort of collateral damage that a lot of people seem to think is absolutely intrinsic and endemic. I don't think that that's true. That doesn't mean that I agree and I support any given law that's being put out there. I'm saying that I think that we're at a state where if we believe that trillion-dollar companies can abuse children and cause them to come to harm, if we believe whistleblowers inside of Facebook that have disclosed internal secret reports that say that, yeah, we decided to do a study on how teenage girls respond to how their use of Facebook, and we find out that no, we are absolutely causing harm to these girls, and they said, okay, well, what are you going to do, and decided to ignore that report. I'm saying that it is legitimate to ask the question, can we craft a safe piece of legislation that holds these companies responsible for the damage that they might be doing to children? Is that possible? We can ask that question. Number two, is it possible to convey to a provider of internet services that this person is a child and therefore would be subject to such a law? These are two questions that I think are worth discussing. And the fact that I think that laws are possible doesn't mean that I'm blind to the idea that a lot of children are not living in places of safety, physical or mental safety, and and that these laws have to be crafted to protect these people and allow them to find their communities, find their health care that they need for whatever they are going through, be it pregnancy, being transitioning, being any or that sort of stuff. My problem is that I don't like that. If you suggest either of these things, sometimes it becomes, oh, well, this is a nightmare of privacy. It cannot be solved. This is exactly the statement that Apple, for instance, tends to make, that there is no compromise on A, B, or C, because it will cause the entire world to come to an end and also make it harder for us to run our business. But we really are promising that's going to cause the world to come to an end.
And you want Apple to be in charge of age verification?
No, I did not. I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that we need to, if we are going to have a law like that, and again, I'm arguing that it's possible that could be a good result, but that's something we need to discuss. How do you verify an age in a way where you're not forcing every user of every part of the internet to have to subject to an identity check to prove who they are? Anonymity and privacy are paramount to free use of the internet, and have to be protected. How do you propose
that? The only way I could think of it is if the parent does it. How do you age verify only some people?
If you have, I'm saying my idea off the top of my head is you have parental controls, okay? You can choose to turn them on. You can choose to turn them off. Okay. If you have them turned off, then you are implicitly saying that I don't really care what my kid does on the internet. Okay, that's great. If you have them turned on, that means that I want my kid to be protected from certain materials that if there is a law in place that says that they need to be protected from predatory behavior from certain corporations and individuals, I want them to benefit from those tools. So therefore, if there is a flag on the system, that's a flag on the device that says, well, that's this reasonable. Person is under the age of 18, yes or no, not here's the identity, here's their social security number.
Sets it, and then you want apps to respect it. Is that not the situation now? I mean,
well, right now you just can't. You just don't let them download the app.
You ask,
and that's exactly. Which is what parents should do, by the way. Like I speak from experience. Like I just didn't let my kids. My kids now they just think their friends are crazy. So but they got through the whatever the push was. But I think that again, I don't think you can. I think the problem is laws are very blunt instruments. And slippery slopes happen, So once someone gets a little wedge in there, they just want to keep opening. That's why Apple's will do everything they can to not allow a crack.
I mean, there are laws that say Facebook should not collect information of kids under 13. Is there just no mechanism to enforce that? What is the issue, Andy? Is it? Is there no setting? Is there no setting on the iPhone that says my kid's underage?
I have to double check.
Well, when you go into 13. The thing is that they can do that. Like, for instance, on TikTok, if you post videos of kids by themselves under 13, it will not get promoted. It won't keep you from doing it,
right?
But it won't promote them because it can see from the physical structure of their face that they are not 16 years old. And it will just not spread them anywhere. I
think what Andy's saying, which I think is not unreasonable, is. And we need to check to see if it's doable at all. But there's a setting in parental controls that says the user of this phone is under age X. And that setting, just like do not track, should be, which is not respected, but should be respected by apps. And they say, oh, there's a setting on here. The person's under 13, even if they surreptitiously downloaded it under the covers with a flashlight at night and Alex didn't know, they still wouldn't be able to do it. I think that's not unreasonable, Andy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Lou MM says, my kids have a kids account on iOS. It blocks a lot of things and requires permission for everything, which I think is another way of doing that. Right? You could say no Facebook for you. I like the idea, though, of having a setting saying this phone is used by somebody under whatever. I guess that's part of the problem is there is no set age. It was 13 under COPPA. In some states it's 16. In some places it's 18. So I don't even know. Oh, what keeps the kids from changing that setting? Well, that's obvious. That's a PIN, right?
Yeah, parental controls. The kids shouldn't be able to change anything.
I feel like the way it works now, it just isn't age specific. It's parent specific. So the parent gets that phone, sets it, says you can't do this, this, and this, and gives the phone to the kid. That seems like is that not acceptable, Andy? Is that not enough?
That's a good step. What I'm saying is that it's not unreasonable, in my opinion, to basically say we're not going to take your word for it that anything you do is when you operate your service is not going to harm children. We're not going to tell you what to do and what not to do. We're simply COSA simply says that if you actually do damage to a child, and again these are part of the rewriting of the laws.
It's specific about what that damage is, right?
Well, no, it is pretty specific in certain. They're basically not talking about they gave the kid the heebie-jeebies. Give me $50,000 to anti-heebie-jeebie them. But it does outline some specific examples like.
In some states, by the way, you can do that. They have a right to sue. For private lawsuits. In some states, you can, as a parent, say heebie-jeebies.
And this is why the difference between I know that the reason why all the large tech companies want federal privacy laws and federal laws on this way is because, of course, it's easier to lobby one legislative body, but nonetheless, it's these state legislatures that are making these blunt instrument sort of laws where it is not designed to protect kids. It is designed to give parents the ability to have total control over their child. It's to make sure that that we don't want my child isn't gay, and so I don't want them to be led into the gay lifestyle. So we want to make sure we can punish Facebook for turning my child gay. These state laws tend to be a real mass of terribleness.
You and I are in a kind of an awkward position. I don't have kids young enough to be doing this. You don't have kids at all. In fact, the only person, and same with you, Jason, your kids are grown, right? The only person I know in this panel who has kids young enough to do this is Alex. Do you use parental controls, or what
Absolutely.
do you do?
I mean, I don't do a ton of parental controls, but I do control all the apps. Apps,
you say you can't have things. And your kids are good enough not to do it even around behind your back.
No, I don't get the impression that they're using any of the apps. I think that what happened was they got kind of through the push of where their friends were doing it. And I think what they saw was that talking to them, they just saw their friends obsessively being part of some of these social networks, and just thought, wow, I don't want to spend time doing that.
You did the parenting thing. You propagandized them. So you don't want to do that.
Well, no, I didn't even say much about it. It just, and I think all they had to see is they were behind, and they got to watch. You did the right thing. You communicated your values to the kids, and the kids now have internalized that, and they continue to live it. And you don't have to be draconian about it and say, oh, I'm going to whip you if you don't do it. Yeah, and it's not that that they don't get access to anything. I'm pretty laissez-faire in a lot of ways, but on their phone, I've been a little bit more restrictive because and I think that it's paid off. I mean, but I don't know. There was never any big fight over it. They just felt like their friends are obsessively looking at their phones all the time, and my kids don't have that same. Which is a problem for me when I'm trying to reach them.
There was, and I think it's still the case. There was a brisk business in parental control software. I think it's still the case,
right?
And there was an equally brisk business for kids and how to get around parental control software.
Right.
I don't think it worked. I was completely laissez-faire with my kids, and they turned out okay, I guess. I mean, one's an influencer, the other's a stand-up comic. Maybe they didn't. I take it back. I should have done what you did. Look, there are all kinds of parents, good and bad. I think the ideal situation would be a parent with good values raises their child with those values, and I think you did that, Jason, with your kids. Your kids have done.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so. But every kid's different too.
Every kid's different. Every parent's different.
Parents and kids, yeah. Every situation is different.
And I don't think big tech should be responsible for doing that job.
Yeah, and I think that I'm surprised that I survived.
Look at us, childhood, right?
And so I think that's the other side of that is that I'm just like, there's a lot of,
we need to.
there's so many. I tell I try not to tell my kids too many stories, but if I say something, I look back on them like, how was that okay? I mean, I was I grew up in the country, running around with a shotgun when I was
you had fireworks.
Shotguns. I mean, like I was 12 years old. I was out shooting stuff with shotguns.
Yes. And by the way, both my kids are I'm very proud of them. I'm just joking when they turned out fine.
I mean, I got a flintlock for my birthday when I was 10. I don't mean like when you put on the wall. I mean, it was a muzzle loader, and I
wasn't real happy when Michael's grandparents kept giving him long knives, like sharp too. He collected them.
Yeah. Okay, here's the operative question: was it like your parents or was it like your in-laws?
No,
because
it's in-laws.
If it was the in-laws, they might have been not having a great relationship with you at that time.
Yeah. Well, no one got stabbed.
There you go. Sounds like a big deal, but really it isn't.
Moose Espionage says in our Discord, I'm surprised anybody survived the lawn dart era.
Oh man, yeah,
those are fun.
And I think that the thing is that we just I think that there sometimes is this thing like we have to make a law for everything that's wrong, and I think there's just a lot of things that we can't make laws for, and I just think it's really, I know that that's a representative is there to make laws, but we don't have to make everything a law. Sometimes it just sometimes it's just people are going to have to figure out how to manage it at their own house level. I think that when you open up parental controls, I don't use most of them. I use some of parental controls. There's an enormous amount of micromanagement that is available right now.
Well, that's the point, is to give you that choice, and then it's up to you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not against Andy's idea of there being an age switch that apps are required to adhere to, that's not a bad idea. That's just one more parental control. All right, we have to take a little break. You are watching MacBreak Weekly. This is actually a topic we discuss a lot in all the shows because right now there is quite a bit of a move to legislate this. Not to mention the move against end-to-end encryption, which feels related to me, If you are not yet a Club TWiT member, I would like to invite you to join the club. It is $7 a month. The benefits are chiefly that you're supporting more programming if you like this show. If you listen, in fact, I can make this deal. If you only listen to one show a week, no problem. No harm, no foul. If you listen to more than one show a week, maybe join the club. Support it. You get ad-free versions of all those shows. Although sometimes inadvertently we leave in the mention of Club TWiT. I apologize. You might hear that once in a while. But no ads. You also get access to special events. The Discord has a lot of things going on, like Micah's Crafting Corner. But mainly you're doing it because you like what you see on our show and you'd like to support it. $7 a month. You can give us more if you want. None of it goes into my pocket or Lisa's. It all goes to support the programming. Join the club. There's a QR code in the upper left there. You can scan that or just point your browser to twit.tv/clubtwit. And we thank you so much for your support. Couple of quick stories. Rumors. iPhone SE will finally ditch LCD for OLED in early 2025.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nikkei News broke the story this morning. Yeah. That was another a difference between like the Android world and the iPhone world. The OLED screens in the early days, people would complain very rightly that, oh my God, the colors are just so cartoonish. They're not realistic, but the technology has moved way, way forward. And now it's just simply a nicer display with better blacks. And when the colors need to be intense, deep, like in a user interface, they're so much more satisfying. So yeah, this is going to be great.
It would be the iPhone SE is the last Apple phone to have an LCD. So
yeah,
it would make sense. Time to ditch it.
Nice that the budget phone gets the nice display too. Yeah.
From O'Grady's Power Page, Apple developing updated Magic Keyboard for entry-level iPad and iPad Air units. Actually, this is from Mark Gurman, but I'm going to give, like O'Grady, I'm going to give O'Grady a little plug there. We got to get him on the show.
Yeah.
I feel like, although I noticed this isn't written by, is it Dan O'Grady? Jason O'Grady. Jason O'Grady. Too many Jasons. He can't be on the show. Sorry.
Can't be on.
Nope. And then I love this Guardian story. I don't know if you guys saw this about Jennifer in Paradise, the first photoshopped image.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Isn't this great? John Knoll, it was his future wife, Jennifer, and she's sitting on the beach in Bora Bora. Beautiful photo taken in 1987. The Guardian says it could be as central to the modern visual vernacular as Edward Muybridge's shot of galloping horses. He says, looking back, Jennifer says, it was truly a magical time for us. My husband actually proposed to me later on in the day, probably just after that photo. But Knoll used it to demonstrate the Pixar image computer, which was in effect an early version of Photoshop, which he wrote later. I think a very good story if you haven't read it yet. It goes with the video that Knoll posted on YouTube. Photoshop, the first demo.
Yeah. Especially how, like, these days any sample image is so carefully stage managed and created. This was just a vacation photo. They were just finished like crunch mode on it. What was it? Who Framed Roger Rabbit? And
yes, they just finished Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
And they were just taking a vacation. And this was just a holiday snap that they made.
Look at this. Here's the early. Is this Photoshop? What is he using? I don't even know.
Yeah, I think that's the early Photoshop.
Yeah.
Wow. He's moving the mountain around. Yeah. Duplicated Jennifer. Every guy's dream, two wives, right?
We're forgetting how much this blew people's minds. I remember that I was teaching at like a summer, my break between high school and college. I was a summer computer institute for the Boston Computer Society, where like most people in businesses would like be sent here for like a week or two of like computer training. And when the first versions of Photoshop came out, And the fact that I was just casually, I remember specifically like just, and see, because it's not just you can actually do anything you want with these photos. And I just circled like someone's nose in a picture and like moved it to the middle of the forehead. And the person I was like showing this to was like, that's horrifying. Like, why would you ever want, like, okay, it's just a picture. It's not like, I haven't stolen his soul. It's not actually happening to him. It was just such a freaky thing for people to see people actually like modifying the content of not a bitmap illustration that might be on a print shop dot matrix print newsletter, but here is something that looks like a photo, and I've changed the reality of that photo by just on a whim in 5 seconds. That blew a lot of people's minds.
Well, and that was the first generation of people going, you can't trust anything you look at it before.
Right.
I feel like I've heard that story.
Probably not the first generation, but it was certainly caused another wave of that. Apparently, David Hockney in the early days, the great painter, was invited to test the program soon after it's released and predicted would spell the end of film photography. I don't think that's what killed film photography.
Yeah.
Also, when Jennifer, his wife, was asked if she would go to Bora Bora with John to recreate the photo, she said, "Oh no, 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 that's not okay."
I want. Yeah. Did the article say like whether or not like he asked permission for? Hi, I'd like to make like this vacation photo of you when you're completely relaxed and comfortable because you're in the presence of someone you trust. Is it okay if I kind of share this with kind of the world?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, they're still married, so I think it probably worked out okay.
They had a conversation, I'm sure.
John, I'm not wearing any top in that photo. Do you mind? Let's see what else before we get to our picks of the week. Apple and Nvidia in talks to invest in OpenAI. Apple's using OpenAI as part of its Apple Intelligence launch, but is it using OpenAI? We found out this weekend that Amazon is going to use Anthropic to power the new Amazon Echo, the remarkable A word they're calling it, $10 a month, maybe $5.
Yeah.
Is Apple? They're using their own models, right? They're not using OpenAI models.
They warn you. What they're using is their own models, except if you want to search for what Apple is calling world knowledge, which is to use it as a search engine, essentially, at which point they will kick you optionally to a third-party AI model. And I think going back to the what's going to happen next Monday, I think place your bets. Would not surprise me if Apple mentions another provider in addition to ChatGPT. They threw around Google Gemini at the developer conference, not in the main presentation, but afterward. They were saying, like, for example, Google Gemini, and said the name, which struck me as being awfully confident that something will be worked out there. And then there is Claude, as well. I would actually not be surprised at all if Apple didn't say, look, if you want world knowledge, pick your poison. You could say no to chatbots, or you could say, give me GPT, or you could say, give me, Gemini or others too. And they've been open about that from the beginning. So I wonder if they'll have more of a story for that on Monday, because obviously they're going to spend a lot of time talking about Apple Intelligence. But beyond that world knowledge stuff, everything else is running on Apple's own models, not anybody else's models that Apple built that are trained and are using your personal information kept locally to intuit things and help you with stuff. That's the idea.
Yeah. And since that event, they've released a whole bunch of papers documenting exactly how their in-house models work. And a lot of people have been giving it strong thumbs up. Obviously, it's not the same level of sophistication as people who have been investing billions of dollars in this for the past 10 years. But they're not just like also ran, hey, look, it can capitalize things. Oh, look, it's kind of a super powerful search. It's like, no, it's a formidable like LLM in and of itself. And it's just still like just a brilliant move of saying we know that we can't be as good as what Anthropic and OpenAI and Google can do today. Why would we shut them out for any reason? All we care about is making sure that things that our users do that where they should expect privacy on an Apple device, they will have privacy. And as you say, Jason, like if they want to leave that safe, warm hug of Apple's privacy bubble, we're not going to stop them from doing that because that's something that they clearly want to do.
Well, and I believe that delivers that feature back to the developers as well. So the developers don't have to figure out how to integrate all of these tools. They're able to just make the call. Like this is what we're going to, I mean, it's not as simple as that, but the idea is that they're making this easy for developers to add AI. And again, they have, and I think that bubble on the phone will get bigger. The bubble in their private, cloud infrastructure will get bigger to a point where my guess is 90% of what you're asking for, they're going to answer in the bubble. Yep, and I think you're right. Right now it's probably 10% of what you're asking or 20%, but I think that they can keep on growing that out. But they built this 3-layer tier where that outer layer is really big and will become thinner and thinner and thinner as they build into it. And that's just it's going to be that's a moat. That's a really complicated moat for other people to wrestle with. So
one other thing about this story, though, is that investors are getting more and more twitchy about putting more money into AI companies because these companies have to spend so much freaking money to get these services up and running and develop the next model and to operate the services they've got on their current models. And it's not necessarily open taps on the profitability right yet. And so this is why for Google and for other companies, a lot of the question is, what are your capital expenses and how are we going to, and how much more money are you going to have to spend to basically become an AI company and continue to provide AI services? I've been reading some coverage regarding this rumor, which I think the Wall Street Journal broke. I might be wrong. Basically saying that OpenAI needs infusions of money, and they're not getting. They're not getting a water. They're not getting waterfalls.
They're going back to the well for more investors.
And investors are again getting more and more twitchy about how much more money do we have to put into before you start actually becoming a hugely profitable and we want a unicorn. Yeah,
trillions of dollars is going to cost.
So I read someone who described this as a bailout, but I don't think that doesn't seem to be a majority opinion. But nonetheless, it is true that is going to be a limiting factor of companies like Apple and Google are in great positions because they have all that ad money. They have all that iPhone money. They can build and they can continue to invest in their own services. However, at some point, even they are going to have to figure out how much money do we have to put in and when can we expect the differential in our products to be paying for all this money we're putting in. It's not a linear question.
And I think that the more you put on the phone, the more cost effective it is for them. Yeah. So it's really an interesting puzzle of when you build the hardware, you can build the hardware so that it is more and more tuned to make that happen.
Yeah, that's exactly why Google was, from the outset, they were very, very clear when they took the wraps off of Gemini, saying, no, this isn't just a server-based thing. This is there are 3 levels of this. So when you need the supercomputer sort of performance, yes, you're going to push this off on a server, but we also have the nano version, which lives entirely on device. And I'm sure that it pleased them that they could start to dress some of their future plans and look, and it's more private. It doesn't leave the sanctity of your device. But as you say, it's we would much rather have you pay for the electricity and the compute cores to actually do most of this stuff if we can possibly make that happen. This is why I don't think we need legislation to force Google and Apple and other companies to do things like that, because they are going to be underwater so quickly if they don't start to produce economically and ecologically positive versions of these models and figure out how to ways to run them that don't require them to build yet another computing center, tears up the local power grid and consumes most of the fresh water in the district. That now they're financially motivated to actually do the right thing, and that's when business, industry, and society work hand in hand, when they're both equally screwed if any one of them screws up.
We go to People Magazine for the hard-hitting, breaking news that we care about.
Finally.
Take a look at the people in People this week.
Yeah. Is Apple's no villain clause for iPhones on screen real? The truth about Apple's rule for movie and TV shows. So you've probably heard it. We've even talked about it. I guess it started with Rian Johnson, director of Knives Out. There was a character in Knives Out who was a bad guy who had an iPhone, and they had to re-edit it to get the iPhone out. Ryan says, there she is. What is she holding? We don't know. But anyway, Ryan says that Apple doesn't allow villains or bad guys to use an iPhone. Apple says there's no villain clause. It is not explicit in Apple's guidelines for using Apple trademarks and copyrights. However, there is another story that may be important coming from a prop master, Heidi Coleto, who discussed this on an episode of the Rap Drinks podcast, which I've really got to start listening to. Apple is very specific, Coleto said. I got a script once where an actress is supposed to be looking at her phone while she's driving drunk and crashes her car. They wanted to see a text message pop up, and I had to be like, well, we can't do that. We've established this character with an Apple iPhone. We can't have her driving drunk and crashing while looking at an iPhone. They will never work with me again.
Yeah.
That's probably the important quote. They will never work with me again.
Yeah, and it's important to note that this is for like it's a nice article because it really rounds up all the quotes that have been said like in interviews and podcasts over like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of different filmmakers' experiences of working with Apple. And the key phrase is working with Apple. If you want Apple to give you like $50,000 worth of assorted hardware to use as props on the set, yeah, they're going to expect that they're going to expect that it's being used in a certain way that's positive to the brand. And if you do something that is not positive to the brand, again, they're not going to sue you and they're not going to put you in a position where you can't release the movie. But that means that, hello, prop master, the next movie you're on, you are not going to be able to get. You're going to have to buy your own damn iPhones.
And I'm not sure what brand is different than that. I mean, it's most of the time product placement comes with a bunch of, like the military gives you access to aircraft carriers because they want to control the narrative. It's a I think that kind of comes
People
with
does bring up the counterexamples in John Wick. The guy who kills John's dog and sets that whole thing off
on an iPhone
is seen using an iPhone. Josh Hartnett's serial killer in Trap, this new movie Trap, appears to be using an Apple device. And an iPhone appears in the villain's briefcase in Ant-Man. Those prop masters will be buying their phones from now on.
Yeah.
You've talked about, what do they call it, Greeking labels and stuff, Alex?
Yeah.
If you wanted to have a cell phone and a text message on a cell phone and a car crash, how?
I think you can do it as long as you don't. I think you may have trouble with the logo. So if they show the Apple logo.
Cover over the Jim Latterback used to cover over all the logos in the studio.
A case without a logo solves that problem, and then they often will composite in a fake UI that looks
right.
phonish.
They call that playback. The playback makes up a UI.
And oftentimes, you see MacBook Pros or MacBooks with just all smooth gray, and that's either done with a sticker or oftentimes it's done in post.
You always know, though, it's a Mac or an iMac. You can't miss it. It's like
pretty much.
Clearly a MacBook.
Pretty much. And then if you do see the logo, that means that either Apple paid or, yes, Apple furnished product for them to use. And,
here's a scene
and it'll
from
be in the credits. It'll actually be in the credits if that happens, if there's a business.
But Apple does not typically pay for placement, but they will provide.
Right.
That's what it says. I'm not sure I believe that 100%. I think that they've probably... It wouldn't surprise me if they do pay occasionally, but I think they generally pay in kind, right? Which is we will send you a bunch of laptops and iMacs and whatever, and you can put them everywhere. And they'll do that. And so if you see the Apple logo, Apple has participated. Otherwise, they're not going to let you see the Apple logo.
Like in this shot from 24, where Kiefer Sutherland is clearly looking at a titanium MacBook.
Yeah, it also goes both ways too. That a lot of these studios have a policy where unless they have a business relationship, they're not going to show a corporate logo because it's advertising, and so you'll get the grayed out Apple logo because there's no business relationship there. But usually that's if you're thinking like, oh, that Apple logo, that's a real ad for Apple. It kind of is, and that's why Apple let them have as many iMacs as they wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't spoil things by telling you that. No, it's in the trailer. Josh Hartnett is the serial killer. In the trailer, you see that. I hope I didn't spoil it.
But that's
the trailer spoiled it, like every other
trailer spoils it.
Yeah. But
the real killer in Knives Out is the only one who uses an Android phone.
Sorry, exactly.
Spoilers for Knives Out.
Yeah, and I still think this is hysterically funny. Like in the sequel, quote unquote, Glass Onion, there is a plot point where someone has to hand an iPad to another person
because they don't have,
but the person who does it like is actually a bad person. And so the way they solve it is that you just he enters the room, they cut to the person, you see like an iPad being thrown into his lap, and then cut right back, and then the other person enters the scene, completing the movement of having thrown something.
Isn't that hysterical?
And yeah.
I didn't actually touch the iPad.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently Knives Out, both the actual murderer and somebody you suspect throughout the movie don't have iPhones. Yeah. So he actually was smart. He kind of...
Yeah, now that people are trying to... Just like there was a time when no one knew what the Wilhelm screen was, and it was like a little in-joke, but now like everybody knows exactly what it is. Now that I think more people are knowing about this trope about how Apple is going to pressure you not to make a bad person use their products. Like, what do you do when it's like, we really have to... We can't have everybody but these two people be using iPhones. It's sometimes it does get in the way. Obviously, an Apple TV Plus series is Ted Lasso. It's going to be like everybody's going to be using nothing but Apple products. But it's like, okay, but this isn't the United States. It's like people do use like things that are not iPhones. It's super. It's like it's weird. Just like in Parks and Recreation, when like Pawnee, Indiana was the only town in which everybody was using Windows Phone and everybody was using Microsoft Surface tablets. No one was using iPads or iPhones. It's like you tend to notice that sort of thing. It's like,
if I, point of order, Mr. Lindsay, if I played the Wilhelm scream, would I have to pay royalties?
No. I think everyone stole it.
Like it's all been stolen. Okay,
it's been stolen for a long time.
It's like, please stop using the Wilhelm scream. Like we know. Oh look, it's cute. Oh look, it's an in-joke. No, it's not an in-joke anymore. You're just being annoying.
It's great.
The very first Wilhelm scream from a movie in 1951 called Distant Drums. I think I could play this without fear of getting taken down. Boy, listen to that music. They used to do music like that in movies.
Library music is so cool.
Here comes the alligator.
I don't know if this is the first
one.
I think that there's actually one before that is a guy getting hit with an arrow in his.
Oh yeah, in Western, the Charge of Feather River. Yeah,
yeah. I don't know which one happened first.
That's why it's called the Wilhelm scream. That came 2 years later.
Oh, 2 years
because the guy was Private Wilhelm.
There you go.
But the actual originator of the Wilhelm scream is lost to memory.
There are some recordings that appear to be somewhere around it. That the sound effects museum or what wants to be.
It's Warner Brothers Sounds Library, stock library.
But there are a couple different records of someone doing something similar. So
you know what they think it was? Sheb Wooley. Do you know what Sheb Wooley is primarily known for?
One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, Jason, you're coming with me in the next bar trivia. That is really
funny.
I'm undefeated in bar trivia.
I bet you are.
True story.
Yeah.
What do you? Yeah. When do you do Jeopardy? That's the question.
When they call me, they got my number.
Have you applied? Have you taken the test?
I'm in the pool. They just have to call me.
Oh man, now I'm gonna have to take the test.
I'll have to reapply at the end of the year. I'll have to reapply, but I'm in the contestant pool if they.
Wouldn't it be funny if we were both in the same episode?
Yeah, I bet they wouldn't allow that.
We don't mention it. I don't know him.
No, yeah, I don't know how we're related in any way. Yeah,
there are thousands of hours of video online with us sitting next to each other, but I don't know him.
No evidence.
No evidence. All right, take a moment, breathe. We will get to our picks of the week in just a minute, and then it's going to be a time for Security Now. But you are watching, for now, MacBreak Weekly with Jason Snell from sixcolors.com, Andy Ihnatko from WGBH, and OfficeHours.global's Alex Lindsay. Alex, pick of the week.
So last week, we did what we believe is the first spatial live stream of a concert to the Apple Vision Pro. So we had the Verve Pipe was visiting, and they were playing in Sweetwater in Mill Valley. And we chose to, I think I have a picture of it somewhere here, but we chose to, we were able to put a camera. We did an interview with them as well. So here's the picture of it here. So this is us. This is with Brian Van Der Ark. And so this was our first little test here. I think there's probably a couple. This is us setting up. But this is me putting it up
there's
top
Sweetwater.
Here.
Yeah.
So there's Sweetwater, and there's our kind of place.
Is the Verve Pipe a Irish folk trio? Because that's what it sounds like they are.
It does sound like that, but no, they're from Michigan. They're the song that they're most known for is "Freshman" from the '90s, and
like an alt rock band.
Yeah, alt rock band, really, really great band, and really great live if you get a chance to see them. And and I've done some stuff in the past with Brian, and so we were talking, and so we did this. We did an interview with them live, and then we did the concert live to Apple Vision Pro. And we had, I think there was somewhere between 300 and 500 people on Apple Vision Pros watching live that watched it there, and so that we think that was the first one for a concert, and so anyway, so that camera app was released, I think, Friday. So we were a little ahead of it because I was doing the beta. So now, if you look for Stream Voodoo Spatial on the iOS store, you can get the camera app now. That's the player app has been available for a little while on the Apple Vision Pro, but there was the business model and how to figure it all out and what to do and how to manage folks was still being worked out. So I was testing it and doing stuff for all summer. Or since May, I think, is when we started streaming from it. And so that is so now what you can do is this camera app will let you, and I don't know exactly what the costs are for the camera app, what the subscriptions are, but it will allow you, all you do is you open up the camera, you hit start stream, and it starts streaming in spatial. And it will see, like, for instance, in this case, I had a USB Pre 2, so I'm feeding audio in through the USB-C connection on the 15 Pro Max. So you can stream spatial to Apple Vision, to Apple Vision Pro live without a lot of other gear. So it's doing it in NVHEVC, and we think that, we're hoping to see a even better version for the 16, but that's brand new, a couple days old, on the App Store. And if you're interested in that kind of thing, I found it to be pretty compelling. As far if you shot any spatial video for an Apple Vision Pro and looked at it, it looks like that, except that it's live. So anyway, you can check it out there.
A number of people in our Discord say, like Walk Blind, live events are what I want most out of VR. That's the feature people really want.
The funny thing is that it really feels like, we're not moving the camera around and everything else. We keep on talking about multi-camera, but it felt very good just to have the camera there and you just watch the experience, and it really does feel like you're just there. So it's a pretty great app. I know Stream Voodoo has been working really hard on it for like the last 6 months or 9 months, I think. So it's pretty slick.
Well, I'm sure your input is very valuable.
It's been mostly like, don't add more buttons. Like, I just keep on going, don't add more. Like they have all the tech. I don't need anything from me. I just always want to be. My goal is that I want to be streaming 10 seconds after I start thinking about it, and that's what you can do here. And you can just literally just text someone the link. And they hit the link and it opens up in Apple Vision Pro and they're watching what you're watching. And we've done stuff, we were surprised, we've done stuff where I move the camera around. Like, we fixed it for this one, but we've done some where I'm panning and walking and everything else, and it's worked out pretty well. So
$100 for the Pro version, $25 for the basic version. Can you use it for free for a little bit?
I don't know if you can.
Okay.
So you may have to decide this is something you really want to do, but it's the only app out there on the phone right now so if you want to do that thing, I think it's
Voodoo Spatial.
There you go. Voodoo Spatial.
Seems like it's free, so it seems like there must be some functionality. Maybe it's only for a few minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Andy Ihnatko, pick of the week. Actually, I want to give Andy credit for coming up with a very important date in history before your pick. Sure. I don't know if you want to do that.
No.
As your pick, but today is the anniversary of The Amazing Us Festival. That's pretty cool. 1982. Unite Us in Song. This is what Woz did with his Apple money. I think he probably spent it all, too. $8 million. I don't think there was much revenue. What a classic event that was.
Yeah. I also... oh darn! I think I lost my tab. But so the day one of the
lineup,
festival,
I have it here.
The lineup, the Police, Talking Heads, the B-52s, Oingo Boingo, a whole bunch is like
Gang of Four, Ramones,
Gang of Four, the Ramones. Yeah,
that was day one.
That was day one, and
no wonder it cost $8 million. Holy moly!
It's like this is a guy who is not trying to build a huge $1 billion bunker to survive the next social apocalypse. I want to get all the greatest bands of the day to that was.
Can you imagine having been there to see all these bands? I mean, they probably were Woz's favorite bands, right? Yeah. And he had good taste in music. Santana, the Kinks, Tom Petty, Grateful Dead, Fleetwood Mac closed it out. And this is 1982 when they actually had hits.
Yeah, these are all bands you've still heard of.
Yeah, they're all still. That's a good point. Here we are. What is it? 30 years later, and almost 40 years later. More than 40 years later, and they're still memorable.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. I don't remember the Thrasher Brothers particularly, but
not really. They were an acquired taste.
Okay, now you're picking. I skipped over that story, but I think it's a really good thing to mention. So thank you for.
And if you go on YouTube, most of the lineups are I think I still have the Stray Cat set still saved up somewhere. So it's all somewhere.
In 1982 VHS quality.
VHS quality, but it's charming. It's like watching Babe Ruth walking fast to the mound in black and white. Yeah, so you get to see scan lines. That's our versions of black and white.
Did any of you go to the Oz Festival? No.
That's 82. I was not allowed out of the house.
I was 11. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this is a great video from Historic Films Archives. You can watch it.
Look, he wore a tie.
He wore
a nice young man.
tie.
He wanted to make a good impression upon the crowd. That's good. That's professionalism. Kids today
pick of the week, sir.
Okay, pick of the week. So I came across. So much of my work every single day is about bookmarks, basically researching things on the web or coming across news articles or things I need to follow up on or things I'm trying to build and references I need to go back to. And my bookmarks on Chrome are an absolute mess. I try to do some sort of a manual thing where I create manual folders sorted by region of date and occasionally by topic, but it's an absolute mess. And so I was looking for something better, and I found raindrop.io, and I've only been using it for about 10 days, but I went from okay, let's see if this works, and to, okay, I'm going to install the browser extension and the iOS app and the Android app and use it alongside Chrome bookmarks, to I don't even bother bookmarking anything in Chrome anymore. It's all being done by this, all within a 24-hour period. Because it's not just I've saved a bookmark. It'll do things like you can have multiple collections of bookmarks, like libraries of bookmarks. You can tag everything individually. Not only that, but it does it's not instantaneous when you bookmark something in Safari or in Chrome. All you got to do is Command Shift S, and it brings up the Raindrop.io bookmark creator. And after a slight pause, it will guess which of your collections you probably want to put this into, and it will populate with suggested tags. So it's only a very, very brief pause. Because one of the big problems of managing bookmarks with other tools that I've tried is that it takes me out of my head and into the problem of archiving this important bookmark when actually I want to remember this for later on. But in addition to all of that, it also will do things like if you're it's free for a limited feature set. It's based on a paid subscription model. It's actually one developer that's doing this. If you have the paid subscription model, it will also index the entire page as it saves it. So later on, if you do a search for a certain topic, it won't just search through page titles, URLs, and your tabs, and your tags, it will actually search for phrases that appeared in the actual content of the thing you're looking for. Another feature that I was really, really happy to have is that you can also set alarms, set reminders. There's so many times where I'll come across a long form article or something that, oh, I really want to get into this tomorrow. I don't have time right now. When you bookmark it, you can actually click a little alarm bell and say, please surface this again for me tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. You can click one button and bookmark all the tabs that you've got open at one time. Over and over again. It has if this then that integration. It has APIs that integrate with a whole bunch of other things. I'm just very, very happy with it so far. I was tentative at first because obviously if you're exposing your web behavior and your bookmarks to a third-party utility, that's potentially a privacy problem. I've assured myself and been assured by things I've been looking up in the past week that that's not something I need to worry about over much. It's been around for about 10 years now, again, all by the same developer. So it's not like it's been a football that's been kicked between shady organization to shady organization. They're very, very explicit on the page about here's our privacy policy. The privacy policy looks good. All this stuff is stored securely on an Amazon Web Services container in Germany. So that sounds good. The only weak point in it is that it's not end-to-end encrypted. So yes, raindrop.io can see your bookmarks. It would be nice if you could optionally have ways of hiding some of your bookmarks from knowledge of even the service that you're subscribing to. But overall, really, really, really good. And it's been rock solid for the past week and a half. One of the reasons that really prodded me to finally look for a better solution than just organizing Chrome bookmarks was that I would find that, wait, there was a story that I was trying to follow. I know I bookmarked it. Why isn't it here? And it turned out that that's one of the X out of 100 bookmarks that I would save on my phone that didn't sync through the cloud to my desktop and other versions of Chrome. This has been absolutely rock solid from top to bottom, inside and out. So I'm very, very happy with it. I became a paid subscriber on day 2, and if things go super south, I will let you know about it. But this has solved a number of problems for me. Where now, when I'm getting ready for MacBreak, it's easy for me to surface everything that I thought that would be good for MacBreak very, very quickly, and not just simply have to look through folders to find stuff that I might have saved or might have not saved. So very happy with it. There's an iOS app. There's an iPad app. There's not a desktop app. It's basically it's a web-based service, but there's also an Android app. There are plugins for every browser you might want to use. So no matter where you surf the web, it will be able to capture stuff from there. Again, very happy with it. Raindrop.io.
Of course, bookmarks are a big part of our business because we're always bookmarking stories for the shows like you, Andy. And I started with Delicious. Remember that? And then Yahoo bought them and it kaput. And then Maciej Ceglowski created Pinboard, which used the Delicious API, and I've been using that ever since. And I played with, I'm actually looking at my Raindrop account. I played with Raindrop. In fact, imported all my old bookmarks, it looks like, last year. Because it is a better bookmark tool. It's just that Pinboard is, as simple as it is, I use Zapier to put it into a Google spreadsheet and stuff. I'll have to go back and take a look at Raindrop again because I was very, very impressed with it. Not free. Well, there is a free version, and then there's a inexpensive, as you say, paid version.
Yeah, it's $28 a year, or $3 a month. If you
It'd be worth it. It'd be absolutely worth it.
Yeah, it saved me. It saved me a lot of time. It's really made a lot of my work a lot more efficient.
And a couple of people in our Discord were at both US festivals. Mark Cosell was there, and Jammer B, John Slanina. Dang. Hi, John. How's retirement going?
He was there.
He said is the first concerts he had press passes for.
Oh man,
he is as you know, a major music fan. He took the entire team to see Roger Waters not once but twice. Maybe 3 times. I don't know. And we all are Humphreys McGee fan because of him. But yeah, John, I said he saw both of them and had press passes. Wow. That's pretty cool. That's really, I'm jealous.
By the way, I just wanted to correct. There's in my pick, there is a free version. So you can you can do 30 minutes for 10 people
good.
Sessions of 30 minutes for 10 people all the time. So there is a way that you can test it.
Yeah.
I was like, there's got to be a way to do that. So I pinged them, and so yes, you can do that. So
yeah. Your pick of the week. We already have a little preview.
Yes.
Jason Snell.
Yeah, it's just a little foreshadowing, but I'll just refer back to what we were talking about in a rat hole earlier. I like
where's the button?
Having a bunch. This is not the rat hole. This is the picks. These count. These count. This is for all the marbles.
There's no rat hole here. This is legit.
No. So the idea here is ambient information is good. Like, it's really nice to have to build a. We look at computer screens all day. We have that, but like there's lots of good information that's inside computers that are nice to glance at, like when you're walking by or something. But it's not something that you want. On a computer screen, you just want it like in your house or something like that. So I enjoy a product called the Lumetric Time. It's $200, so it's not cheap, but it is. They say it's like an alarm clock and it's a radio player. I don't even use it as any of those things. I just use it as a display. It's a simple bitmap interface, but basically you can pass it a JSON file, and they've got a whole bunch of icons that you can use, and you can do text, and you can set up. And with the new one, the one they released a couple of years ago, they even have an app you can install from their app store that you point at a JSON file on a server that you control, and you can have that JSON file display anything. Mine is I have PHP. And it outputs JSON based on a bunch of different things. So when it's raining, there's an animated raindrop on the display. And when the sound or the smoke from the forest fires is thick outside my house, it actually puts up the AQI symbol and warns me about it. But in a normal time, it's the time and the temperature from my weather station. So it's a lot of fun. And if you want something with more pixels than this, and it's a little bit bigger, there's also the TWiT, which is sold out right now, and that's about the same price, $189 for the V2 of the TWiT, which Leo mentioned. And they have basically varying degrees of programmability. You can write apps, or you can just do this very simple thing where you feed it some basic data. And for me, I know enough to be dangerous with building like that simple PHP output based on a bunch of different variables from my weather station and from the weather forecast and from my purple air sensor and stuff like that. And I roll it all together, and I get a little thing that sits under my TV, and there's one over my shoulder here too. Tells me the time and the temp outside, and then alerts me if anything else is going on. It's great. So I like it.
Why do you like it better than the TWiT?
I didn't like, I got the first generation TWiT, and I thought that the pixels were too big and too far apart. And it felt a little more like a light bright. Which is funny because the pixels are bigger on the Lumetric, but they're close. I think it's the space between them that really struck me, that it felt more like a light bright. But I have a friend, I gave my TWiT to a friend, and he loves it and has built, he took all the X screensavers. This is my friend Greg Noss, and he converted them so that the X screensavers play on the TWiT, which is hilarious. Cool. That's very cool. Yeah, and you can do some really advanced stuff like that. What if JWZ knows that? That's great. That's hysterical. The story is, I used to use, if anybody remembers Slim devices, they used to make the Slim P3 and then the Squeeze Box, a bunch of really great music players, but they also had this vacuum fluorescent display that was really bright, and I used it as a clock and temperature in my living room, and it was great. And they got bought by Logitech, and as all things that get bought by Logitech, they were destroyed. Yes. Moment of silence for Slim devices. And then I was at TWiT doing a show, and I saw the Lumetric Time, and I said, Leo, what is that? I want that. You said it's Lumetric Time, and I bought one, and I have never looked back. And when it was unplugged accidentally not too long ago, the Truest endorsement, my wife said, "What's wrong with the thing?" Because she actually uses it. It's not one of my stupid computer things. It's just the time and the temperature for regular human beings to enjoy. So yeah, Lumetric Time. Actually, and it does a bunch of other weird stuff too. And if you want that, I'm thinking because it will take a JSON file, it would be easy for me to have one in behind me that has the total member count of Club TWiT. Yeah, that a lot of their use cases are like, show your YouTube subscribers, show how many people are watching live, which is a fun one. Oh, that'd be fun. Right. And it's and the JSON thing makes it super easy, right? Because you have a script somewhere that processes and talks to whatever APIs it needs to, and then it just outputs a little JSON file that goes on the screen.
Oh, that would be kind of cool if I could have. So it'd show the club membership, and then the right after that, the number of people watching live.
Yeah, because it's got
7 different streams. It'd have
it
to
supports
collate.
multiple frames in the JSON file, so you can say, I only have one for mine, but you could say frame 1, frame 2, frame 3. Dump the contents in there, and then it'll rotate between them. It's very.
Were you mad when they named that after you, the JSON file?
No, I love it. I own it.
Okay.
It's mine. Jason's JSON files are the best of all of them. How could they not be? What are you talking about?
That's Jason Snell from 6colors.com.
Yes, check it out.
And if you want to know what he's up to podcast-wise, 6colors.com/Jason. Anything you want to plug?
Oh, what do I want to plug? Upgrade that I do with Mike Hurley. Yesterday we do a draft before every Apple event where we competitively choose what Apple is going to release.
Who's winning so far?
And well, it's gone back and forth. I had a big win streak, then Mike had a big win streak. I won the last one. And we'll see how it goes, see if I can defend my title this time. And we'll be back obviously next week after the event to talk about it. But the draft is a fun way to talk about, just as we struggle here with like, what are we going to talk about the week before an event? You put a little competitive twist on it in order to talk about what we think is going to happen.
Nice. Thank you, Jason Snell. It's always great to see you. And I will be listening to Upgrade and scoring your results next week.
Upgrade.cards to score along at home.
Oh, there are actually cards?
Absolutely.
Wait a minute. Oh my God, there are. So each event has its own cards.
Yeah, and you can just click and keep score on who's right and who's wrong.
Oh my God, you guys are such
event
nerds.
Goes on. That's great.
And this benefits St. Jude as always with the relay. So that's nice.
We are going to do a thing where we have like catchphrases that Apple says, and we put down points on whether will they be spoken at this event or not? Will they say it's a blow away feature? I clean up if they say a blow away feature.
And I'm guessing that it was you, not Mike, who did the MLB tribute icon.
I art directed that a little bit. Yes, that's true.
Because I don't think Mike even knows what MLB
We had another
for.
icon that looked like somebody was using a bong, and I said, "Can we fix this?" And then that was what came back. So I like it.
Mr. Jason, thank you so much. Appreciate it. You will be running the show next Tuesday, post-Apple event. Micah Sargent and Rosemary Orchard will be hosting that event, by the way, Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 1700 UTC. You can just watch Apple's event straight, but it's so much more fun to watch the MSTK 3000, MST3K version of it, if I said that right. Andy Ihnatko, WGBH is calling.
Yes, I got rescheduled a week, so it's not going to be this week, but next week after on 12:45 week from Thursday. Second Thursday of the month. Go to wgbhnews.org to listen to it live or later.
And Jason P. Hall in our Discord says he had one of those Slim Devices clocks, which recently died when Logitech finally killed the servers. He says they've been losing about a minute a week ever since.
Well, the fun thing about the Slim Devices stuff is that the original server was open source. The idea there, they were a competitor with Roku back in the days before Roku pivoted to video.
I had one of them. Yeah.
And so if you've got a really, really old Slim Devices music player, you should be able to get that software from somewhere and use them. But once Logitech bought it, and they ran out of vacuum fluorescent displays. I think that was actually part of the big problem. They had to go to LCDs, and they're not as bright and they're not as good. And Logitech bought them and put them on a proprietary platform. And we know what happens when your hardware is on a proprietary cloud platform. That's actually one of the things I didn't mention about the telemetry time is I believe they now in their latest version there's a local API. So if they ever went out of business, you could still use it, which is, I mean, that's how it should be.
That's a must, to be honest. Yeah.
I know.
Alex Lindsay, officehours.global every day, and then the after hours, and then the graymatter.show, and the thing, and he's doing it all the time.
I'm not, I mean, there's just
somebody is.
There's a big village that puts it together.
It's a village.
We had Jessica Calarco on Friday. She talked about inequality in education and what that looks like. It was a great interview with Michael Krasny, and Extra Hours is our new thing. So that's Monday nights. So if you haven't been able to tune into office hours because it was too early, you can now ask questions. And it's a much more conversational, like we just kind of like wander around like in the evening, much different than the morning. So it's a lot of fun. And again, we're testing a lot of cloud infrastructure as well. It's funny, we have like 4 or 5 people, or I think last night was only 3 people, different people editing the show, like testing different, so that it was being done in Mimo Live. I think someone might have been planning to either did it or planning to do an eCam, because then we can all just jump into the cloud and grab onto the files. And so there's lots of experimentation going on with how we do these in the cloud as well.
Some very cool people involved, including, of course, Mr. Alex Lindsay. Thank you all for being here. I will not see you for a few weeks. I hope you can survive without me. I bet you can. I bet you do better. But I do appreciate your holding down the fort while I am gone. I'll be back September 24th so that's 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks I'll be gone. You can watch MacBreak Weekly right here, wherever here is, on YouTube, on Twitch, on Discord if you're a Club TWiT member, on X.com, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Kick, soon on Telegram. But if you can't watch us live every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC, you can always watch on demand because it's a podcast. That's the whole point. On-demand versions available at our website, twit.tv/mbw. If you go there, you'll see a link to the YouTube channel. You can also watch there. That's a great way to share a little piece of it with somebody else. YouTube makes that easy. Of course, best thing to do would be subscribe. That way you get it automatically. Find a good podcast client, Apple Podcasts. We like Pocket Casts, Overcast. Whatever it is that you use, subscribe, and that way you won't miss an episode. Audio and video available every week. Thanks to John Ashley, our producer and technical director today. Thanks to all of you for joining us, and a special thanks to our Club TWiT members. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, I must say, it's time to get back to work because break time is over. Bye-bye.